And we are live.
Welcome, everyone, to the June 7th Town Board Work Session. Carol, if you could please take the roll call. Present.
Present.
Here. Present. Can everyone kindly stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So today's meeting is going to start with a public portion, and then we'll get into our work session topics, and they include an airport update from our legal counsel at Cooley. And unfortunately, Jim Brundage, our airport director, was on the agenda, but he won't be joining us today. We'll get the 2021 LTV annual report from Executive Director Michael Clark, a piping Plover update from environmental analyst in our Natural Resources Department, Samantha Klein, and then we'll switch to all hands on housing. It's a follow-up from our May 17th work session, and we'll be discussing the 395 Panago Affordable Homes Project, the Route 114 Community Housing Project, and the zoning chapter that talks to affordable accessory apartments. And then we'll do liaison reports and resolutions. So let's start with public portion. I don't know if there's anybody here in town hall that wishes to speak. No. Jason, is there anyone on the line?
Yes, we have two people on the line, and I will unmute the
Great.
first person now.
Thank you.
Okay. Caller 8764, you're on the air.
Good morning. This is Dave Buddha. How are you? I'd like to raise the topic, well, two topics. One, with respect to our efforts to maximize affordable housing, and particularly with regard to the, I think it's 295 Panago Road site. I've never understood why it seems that we have ruled out the prospect of rental apartments in that location. Obviously, rental apartments can generate a much higher density of affordable housing, which is the purpose, to maximize the available new affordable housing. Yes, there are neighbors that should be protected against any deleterious effects of a housing project, but you can do that with sufficient buffers, which you already are preparing to do. The plan that seems to have materialized out of, I don't know where it materialized, for individual single affordable homes is just an inefficient way to seriously address the problem. The second matter I'd like to mention is town road improvement of the urban renewal roads, so-called urban renewal roads. I like to refer to them as the old filed map roads. On the agenda today, one of your agenda items is resolution 767, which deals with Harbor View Avenue, and Harbor View is two words. That road is probably one of the worst in East Hampton. For a long time, at both the 3 Mile Harbor road end and towards the eastern end as well. I mean, at the top of that hill, there's a mogul field that would make any mountain in Colorado pleased if you were a skier. But if you're a highway driver, it's horrendous. Now, obviously, you're going to address that by this resolution, although it's unspecific as to exactly what they're going to be working on with one end or the other or both. I've suggested in the past that an appropriate topic for a work session would be to call in your consulting engineer, whose job it is to give out the road work assignments, and find out how you're doing on road work assignments for those roads that really need improvement. It would be a useful thing. One last thing. East Hampton Town has not taken advantage of the opportunity provided by Town Law Section 270 to create what's called an official map, a map that would detail specifically all streets, highways, and town parks, and showing their dimensions and location. It seems like there's no real town highway map that people can reference find out whether they live on a town highway or not. I understand the only town map that shows the town highway system is on the wall of the office of the highway superintendent, and that's really inefficient. It seems like even the people who create your town resolutions in the supervisor's office don't appreciate and don't know that part of Harbor Boulevard, about a one-third section, is in the town highway system. In fact, even the pothole that you're proposing to repair by Resolution 766 is in the town highway system, and therefore that intersection of Claremont Street and Harbor Boulevard does not need a special resolution in order to authorize the Highway Department to fix that pothole. And those are my comments for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Okay.
Jason, you had another caller?
Yes, I do. I'm muting next caller. Hello, caller ending 0673. You are on the air. Hello.
Hi, thank you. Good morning, Supervisor and board members. I'm Erin Sweeney, the Executive Director of the East Hampton Community Alliance. In anticipation of the Cooley presentation and the specific mention on page 4 about closure of the airport, EHCA wishes to renew its request to meet with you to discuss a practical path forward. As the town determined during its community engagement process, over 80% of residents support keeping the airport open with reasonable restrictions. You likely saw recent media reports that this notion of reasonable restrictions with engagement by the aviation community is gaining acceptance. With the current TRO and all the ongoing litigation, EHCA is concerned that we will all lose sight of the overwhelming desire to keep the airport open. Due to the fact that EHCA is not a party to any lawsuit, we are uniquely positioned to begin these conversations. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Erin. Jason, are there any other callers?
And we have one more caller. Hello, caller ending 4141. You're on the air.
That's
a
town number.
That's a town
caller.
number.
Okay. All right. Well,
Sorry about that.
It's
Somebody
all right.
may be listening in.
It's okay. That's fine. Well, on that note, we currently have no new callers. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jason. So let's start with our first agenda topic, which is an airport update. Could you please let Bill O'Connor in?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
We can, Bill. Thanks for joining us today.
I also have Andrew
My
Barr in
pleasure.
the waiting room. Should I let him in as
Oh,
well?
please let him in as well.
Making sure. Thank you.
Bring my slides up. I know they were made available yesterday.
Great.
I take it everybody can see that?
We can. Thank you.
Great. Members of the town board, Bill O'Connor from the Cooley Law Firm, here this morning to give you an update on the legal status of the airport in East Hampton and an update on the current litigation. As everybody is probably aware, the FAA confirmed that the public use East Hampton Airport, the airport that was formerly known as HTO, was deactivated on May 18th, 2022. The private use East Hampton Town Airport, the airport now known as JPX, was activated by the FAA on May 19th, 2022. All FAA charts and publications reflect the permanent closure of HTO and opening of a new private use airport, JPX. As an example, if you take a look at the slide that I have up right now, the image here is an excerpt from the FAA's VFR sectional charts. These are charts available to pilots for navigation. These are the charts that came into effect on May 19th, 2022. You'll notice that the airport is called East Hampton Town Airport, and has the letters PVT just above it where you see my cursor, if you can see that. That is the FAA's way of explaining to pilots that an airport is private, which generally means that the use of the airport must be authorized by the owner before a pilot can land or take off from there. Just to the left of JPX is another airport called Foster. If you can see where my cursor is. This is a similar example to JPX, and it shows also that it's private. And from a regulatory standpoint, the FAA considers JPX and Foster to be the same. They are private use airports where the owner can control who comes in and who goes out. You'll notice a difference where JPX here is in blue lettering, where Foster is in red lettering. That denotes the type of airspace that governs the airport. JPX, because it's within Class D airspace, and the reason for that is you have a control tower. It is denoted in blue, whereas Foster does not, which is why it's in red. That just simply confirms what we've been saying all along, that operational capabilities such as a tower and instrument procedures are available at the private use JPX airport today. On that point, I just want to say the process that the town undertook to change the status of the airport from public use to private use was a significant undertaking that we were very transparent and public about for many months, and took a remarkable amount of effort, expense, and was truly a first of its kind process to try to address the unique situation in East Hampton in terms of gaining control over the use of the airport. This happened in a seamless manner from the deactivation of HTO to the activation of JPX on May 19th, 2022. And looking ahead, the FAA has confirmed that JPX is the only active airport in the town of East Hampton, and HTO has been permanently closed. This should provide the town with significant discretion on how to operate JPX, and if or when it would like to suspend operations or close the airport altogether. As is also well known, there has been significant litigation starting in February of this year. The town's effort to establish local rules to balance the community's stated desire with those desires of aviation stakeholders was challenged by a small minority with seemingly unlimited funds to challenge the town's efforts. These lawsuits allege state environmental claims, federal claims, and a handful of process-based claims. In the appendix to my presentation, we've listed the parties in counsel in each of these cases. Importantly, there are 3 Suffolk County cases that are related, pending before a single judge. We call these cases the Blade case, the Coalition to Keep East Hampton Airport Open case, and the East End Hangars case. Each of those cases are pending in Suffolk County Supreme Court, and on May 16th, 2022, the judge assigned to those cases entered a TRO in each of the cases without providing a reason. The town is complying with the court's orders as well as applicable law. There are currently no pertinent rulings in the other cases. It's those 3 Suffolk County cases where there is a pending TRO, or in the administrative cases that are pending before the FAA and the DOT. As far as next steps, obviously we've been working very closely with you, the town board, and the town attorney, John Jilnicki, regarding all of the litigation that's summarized in the appendix and that I just discussed. It is our understanding that the town board will be weighing several options related to the litigation and the future of JPX. As the community well knows, in 2021, the public engagement sessions made clear that the town board should try to find a way to balance operations at the new airport. It was also made clear that another season like prior years was not acceptable. Given the overwhelming mountain of litigation filed by airport users challenging the town's efforts to strike a careful balance of operations, we have been asked to begin the process of understanding and completing the steps to permanently close JPX as soon as legally possible. The town has conveyed this message to the FAA, and unless the town can achieve the community's desire for a balanced airport in the near term, it is our understanding that the town must now pursue a path to closure. After closure occurs, the town can, in its discretion, consider reopening JPX under common sense regulations. But it is the town's understanding that it is heard from the community loud and clear, and its mandate is to do everything in its power to prevent further unmitigated noise and environmental impacts stemming from the airport in its current use or its prior use unrestricted. This is an unfortunate result given all of the good faith and hard work accomplished by the town and the FAA in opening one of the most, if not the most sophisticated private use airports in the country. We'll have more additional details on the timing and process to share with you in an executive session after this meeting. I want to address the use of airport funds. The town board has received related to funding of the, I want to address questions regarding the use of airport funds that the town board has received related to funding of the airport and the related litigation. All airport expenses are paid for with airport funds. That has always been the case, even though the town now, with the expiration of the grant assurances, has the right to use airport funds as it desires. The town has publicly stated time and again that it would use airport funds at the airport to ensure the airport was not a financial drag on the community. The airport fund is generated by landing fees, fuel flowage fees, and leases at the airport. No general funds are directed towards the airport fund. In prior challenges, the FAA has made clear that an airport's capital and operating costs expressly include consultant fees and litigation costs. So in line with this guidance, setting aside that the FAA's revenue use rules no longer apply to the town has used exclusively airport funds to pay for the litigation and all related consultant fees. I'll stop there, see if there are any questions from the town board.
Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Kathy, if I may, I want to reiterate what was my initial commitment to the airport as a candidate after attending all of the engagement sessions during the entire year of 2021 and all the presentations, if I may. This is a letter that was published in October in the East Hampton Star, which I wrote. Dear David, I am a candidate for East Hampton Town Board, and I have stated in my campaign materials and advertising that if I am elected, I will act to change the status quo of the East Hampton Airport. I am writing this letter to inform our voters of what changes I propose. First, I believe we must look at this issue in a holistic way. I believe that we cannot simply prohibit helicopter and jet flights into East Hampton Airport without addressing the potential repercussions for Montauk and citizens throughout the town. Therefore, I propose that the town immediately pursue acquisition of Montauk Airport and then modify the regulations regarding what types of aircraft can land at East Hampton Hampton Airport. I support eliminating all commercial helicopters and jets, chartered or scheduled. I support a night curfew for all aircraft. We must address the Superfund cleanup area and protect the multitude of endangered plant species and meadows that exist there. The airport property is in a drinking water aquifer recharge area, and we must place easements over the property to ensure that these changes are protected in perpetuity. The status quo is unsustainable. Our community has been impacted by noise, air, and water pollution from many sources for too long. With grant assurances having expired at the East Hampton Airport, the time to act is now. Our community deserves nothing less. Sincerely, Kate Rogers. And I just wanted to read that as a reminder of the course that I thought was proper from the beginning.
Appreciate that, Kate. Does anybody else have anything they want to add?
Just for myself, we're in a situation right now where overall I do not support closure of the airport, but I do support meaningful changes to the airport. I do also support the town board's decision to request of our council right now actions that would effectuate a possible closure of the airport as is appropriate to find out what that would take to do so. I hope that we can come to a conclusion in which there is meaningful changes to the operations, and we will follow all the TRO and all the court decisions that have been made then also.
Thank you. And I just want to add that, we've been working with Cooley on this. And prior to that, I've been with liaison for the airport for 4 years, starting in 2014. We've always had an open door, listened to our constituents, our residents that were complaining about the noise, and rightfully so, and the pollution, and also from the users of the airport. I really felt we struck a balance back then with the laws in 2015, but unfortunately that got struck down by the courts. And here we are now, no longer with grant assurances. We've worked, we've always had an open door. We, got hundreds and hundreds of comments during the community engagement piece. We came forward with the PPR. We worked within the regulatory process of the FAA. They took us seriously. They worked seamlessly. And as Bill said, a lot of good faith and hard work went into this. We all know how much time we've all spent discussing the airport, even just in the first 6 months of this year. And so now, for me, I'm at a crossroads. And as the slide states, it's the community's desire for a balanced airport. And if that can't be achieved, then we may be left with no other choice but to look at closure. So, Bill, if you could come back, we have a couple of callers that are still on the line. I'm open to taking questions or comments, if there's anybody that didn't get call in during the public comment, if that would be okay.
And Bill, there's an amendment to this also, which is online. Could you just explain what's in that amendment? You don't necessarily have to show it, just explain what information's in that, if anyone's interested.
The appendix?
The attachment.
The appendix?
Appendix,
yeah.
Yeah.
It probably
the
couldn't
appendix-
hurt to just put the slides up, Bill, if you don't mind.
I would
so
agree
that
with that.
the community can see the 5 state actions and
Right.
federal action.
And I'm happy to just briefly tick through these if that would be helpful as
That
well.
would be great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Because I think, part of, it's sort of remarkable, frankly, the amount of litigation that you're dealing with right now. And the frustration is certainly understandable, and it's a frustration that I share myself. And some of the criticism that we've heard in court and in the press is entirely unfair. And in my opinion, is the effort of a very small group to run the airport for you, or to tell you how you're supposed to run the airport. So who is this small group? The first case is the Blade lawsuit. Blade admittedly has said in public that they feel they're responsible for the vast majority of commercial traffic at the airport. They are certainly putting a lot into the litigation. You'll see those, they're also joined by some individuals here. I understand these are individuals that are residents of Montauk, but that's the one case that's pending in Suffolk County Supreme Court, handled by Gibson Dunn and several of their lawyers, along with Linda Margolin. The next lawsuit is the coalition lawsuit. The coalition, we don't have a full transparency into who the members are of the coalition, but as you'll see, there are several individual plaintiffs as well, such as Andy Sabin and others, represented by the Greenberg Traurig law firm and several lawyers at that firm as well. The next lawsuit is the East End lawsuit. It has two organizations, the East End Hangars, Inc. and the Hampton Hangars, Inc. Group. I understand these are hangar tenants at the airport, along with several individuals like Mr. Tom Bogdan, who, as we all know, is a resident of Montauk, represented by another large international law firm, the Pillsbury Winthrop firm, led by Jim Catterson, and the aviation law firm of Eckert Siemens, Riaz Bimani, and others at that firm. There was a lawsuit filed the week before the airport was to transition to private use by Manny Villar, brought by Bob Lynn's law firm. Interestingly, for reasons we don't quite understand, it was brought in Nassau County in an effort to get a TRO. That TRO was denied. Venue for this is going to be moving from Nassau to Suffolk by agreement. It was really filed in the wrong court to begin with, and so it's going to move to the right court in Suffolk County. The Long Island Airlines lawsuit. The plaintiff here is an entity that was formerly controlled by Ben Krupinski. He had a hangar at the airport, and his estate still has an interest in that hangar, although the town has taken steps to evict that tenant for noncompliance with the lease. Aspects of that case include requests for injunctive relief to keep the status quo at the airport. That case is also handled by Bob Lynn's law firm as well. The next lawsuit is brought by MBAA in federal court. They actually sought to reopen the 2015 case, the Friends of East Hampton versus the town case, and sought contempt for violation of that injunction. That was summarily denied by Judge Seibert, and I understand that MBAA is going to dismiss their request to reopen the Friends of East Hampton case, but they did file a new action on the eve of the plan to change the status of the airport in federal court. That's also pending before Judge Seibert. There was a TRO request in that case. Andrew argued that during that hearing, Judge Seibert has not issued a decision in that case. During the process of this case, Judge Baisley's TRO was entered, and so far she's not taken any action, in part, we think, because of Judge Baisley's order. There are two now consolidated into one proceeding before the FAA, but Curtis Dupe Services LLC, and Jobs Lane Aviation LLC filed actions before the Department of Transportation and the FAA, seeking emergency relief to stop the change in status of the airport from public use to private use, and also the institution of the planned trial PPR restrictions. So far, the only action that's occurred is that the DOT case, and this is because it's unclear where jurisdiction lies, or at least was to the petitioners, whether they should proceed before the DOT or the FAA. on their claims. So they basically split them before the parent agency and the FAA, the parent agency being the DOT, and then the FAA. The FAA has now taken both of those complaints and is handling them together. And so far, there's been no decision in either of those cases, although they are being actively litigated. So in each of these cases, in the Suffolk County cases, there are between 300 and 400 docket entries alone in each individual case. The town is required to respond individually in each of those cases. And so far there's been, as you would expect, a lot of effort that has to go into dealing with those cases on a daily basis. You have a great team at Cooley with Andrew and myself and Nick Regano at Regano LLC, and of course the Whiteman Osterman Hanna firm has been actively involved in defending all of these cases for you. Are there any questions on kind of what's going on? I mean, I think the most significant development has obviously been in the three Suffolk County cases where there was a TRO entered on May 16th.
Right. Which we are fully in compliant with.
Absolutely.
Okay. So why don't we see, Jason, if there's anybody on the line that wanted to speak during public portion but didn't get an opportunity to.
Absolutely. And the call-in number is up right now on the broadcast as well. So unmuting the first caller.
Yeah.
Hello, caller ending 4937. You're on the air. Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Loud and clear. You are talking to the town board.
Thank you. This is Barry Raybeck. I'm the director of the Coalition to Transform East Hampton Airport and a lifelong resident of the town of East Hampton. I want to commend the board for your actions today. The airporters have left us no choice. 1% of visitors and residents use the airport. 1%. These folks refuse to consider any meaningful restrictions. And at the hint of even modest restrictions that we on the environmentalist side thought were much too modest, they're suing the town which owns the 600 acres of public land which the airport sits upon and pollutes. The airporters have continually bullied this community. They've insulted us and distorted the facts for their own purposes. This community has done the opposite. We've relied on facts in terms of all the pollution from the airport, the noise, the groundwater, the air, and the clear danger of this, as well as the reckless flying, with several crashes, 9 in the left since 2002, and the reckless flying of thousands of flights over our homes and over the entire region. And this is only getting worse. It continues to get worse and worse and worse. And the airporters' response is to threaten people. The people that run Blade are extortionists. I always say Blade is aptly named. It has a blade to the throat of this region. It's foisting unwanted helicopter flights on a community that's saying, we've had enough. So again, I commend the board. I like Kate's letter. The airporters have left us as a community no choice. Thank you for all your work and your tireless efforts to do the right thing.
Thank you, Barry. Jason, is there another caller on the line?
Yes, there is. Hello, caller ending 2650. Can you mute your TV in the background and just note you're live on the air?
Hello, caller ending 2650. Can you mute your TV in the background and just note?
Hello, caller 2650.
Hi, I'm sorry. I apologize. My name is Lorraine Hayes, and I apologize in advance if this question was answered because I had trouble getting onto the meeting. I can, first of all, would like to say the amount of litigation is just mind-boggling. I just can't fathom it. Is there a way of consolidating these cases into one case, or is that not practical or in our best interest? I guess that's one question I have.
Lorraine, we're just taking public comment today, so
All right,
I've noted
all right.
your
The other
I've
comment-
noted your question.
My other question is, I know there's a TRO, which is temporary restraining order. I mean, is there a date where there is going to be a hearing to make a determination if the TRO becomes a permanent injunction? I never really, I don't know what the status is of that. So that's another comment I have that I'd like to have answered, because I know it is a TRO, which is temporary. So, I mean, that's until there is a full hearing. Is there a date for that? That's another question I have. So those are my questions. And obviously, I'm in favor of closing the airport, because there's no way that these restrictions are going to make much of a difference. I did an analysis and sent a letter indicating the percentage difference that would happen. And it's really very negligible at all. So those are my comments. So if I could have any answers to that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Lorraine. Jason, is there anyone else on the line?
Unmuting next caller. Hello, caller ending 2610. You're 17. You're on the air.
Yes, hi, good morning. This is John Corrine from the town of Southampton. On behalf of your neighbors to your west, and I'm sure this would be echoed by many neighbors all the way back to Manhattan, I just want to thank you and applaud the board for your ongoing courage and conviction. I think many of us who are skeptical about restrictions anticipated that that's tiny minority of people who refuse to compromise would throw things at you, but I don't think anybody could have imagined that the volume that Mr. Cooley just laid out. It's becoming more apparent that whatever you try to do to impose reasonable restrictions will not be accepted, in spite of aviation industry consultants and lobbyists who say one thing. Their actions in the courts are evidence that they have no interest in any compromises of any kind. We've seen things in local papers of advertisements that basically lie about you all and say that you're not acting in the best interest of the community. That couldn't be further from the truth. The amount of effort and transparency that you have put against this effort is extraordinary. I dare say you are the model for how local residents should lead their communities. I've often said I can't imagine the pressure that you're under individually and collectively to cower to big money, wealthy people who have resources beyond those of the town, which is shocking. I guess I'll end it again with just saying thank you, and to please stay the course. You've done everything with the ultimate amount of integrity. You should be very proud of the work you are doing. You should just, as best you can, the funny thing is we're all kind of neighbors, and in our regular lives, we're kind of regular people. But then you're cast into the spotlight and being vilified by wealthy people, most of who don't even live in this community. So stay the course. Your neighbors support you. The public hearings were more than enough evidence to show that you've got the public backing. So I keep you in my thoughts, and honestly, I keep you in my prayers, because there's got to be a tremendous amount of stress on you all personally. So stay healthy, be well, and continue the great work you're doing.
Okay, and moving on to the
Thank you,
next
John.
caller. And hello, caller ending 0431. You are on the air.
Good morning. This is Catherine Sly, local resident, local pilot. I just have to say I'm actually really quite shocked by this move by the town and their attorneys. Since when do elected officials of a municipality think it's acceptable to essentially dox their own residents and constituents who just simply disagree with it as a means of revenge and to attempt to harass and intimidate them? While the names of the litigation are publicly available to those who choose to pull up like a full litigation heading, there's really absolutely no valid purpose or reason for Cooley and the town to have individually listed the names in a delineated column in bright red block of everybody who happens to be involved, the local residents. Why are you listing individually in bright red block the names of the local residents, your constituents who simply disagree with you? What possible legitimate purpose could you possibly be trying to convey to the community by listing these names other than as a tactic for pure intimidation and harassment? Is that what this town board is calling for? Is that the purpose of listing the names of individual residents who happen to disagree with you? And what happens next if somebody disagrees with you about the wind farm? If somebody disagrees with you about any other subject going on in the town? Are you going to begin to start listing the names of the people that disagree with you in public presentations in bright red block? Is that the kind of intimidation tactics that this town board is engaging in? And if so, really, is this supposed to be acceptable that you guys are going to be doing this? So that just to me is astounding. But the actual substance of the presentation, it's a bit shocking that, I mean, I realize that Mr. O'Connor, they're all attorneys and they're designed to kind of spin and twist and contort facts in a certain way. So let's talk about a couple things. The first one is the FAA did not permanently close HTO. The town of East Hampton, the 5 board members did that. The FAA only processed the paperwork that was filed by the town at the town's request. The 5 town board members are the ones who have closed HTO in direct violation of the court's TRO order. You are in violation of it. You're not complying with it. You violated it. Not only that, but you did so as part of a several-month-long misrepresentation, blatant misrepresentation to the court about your intentions to avoid the original TRO that was filed back in February. So no, you're not in compliance with the TRO, and you did misrepresent to the court your intentions to close HTO. So it's the town that has closed HTO, not the FAA. JPX does not.
Thank you for your comments, Catherine. Catherine, we're every speaker gets 3 minutes to address the board. Your time is up. If there's more that you want to share with us, please reach out. You can call us or send us an email.
Well, can I wrap up as a conclusion at least?
Sure.
Since you're allowing a lot of other people to have a lot longer conversations, but obviously you're afraid of the information that I'm saying. Well, this is my conclusion.
We have a timer,
contrary to the
just so you know.
misleading narrative that you're trying to create, the local residents who have sued the town are actually in support of reasonable restrictions and controls. Absolutely nobody is opposing rational and reasonable restrictions. But the ones you've proposed are draconian, disproportionate, and deeply flawed, not designed to accomplish any of the goals that are stated. We want compromise. I'll say it again. We want compromise. But every single request we've had to sit down and have a discussion with the town board has been rejected. Peter, how many times have we reached out to you and you abjectly refuse to have any kind of conversation with anybody? We want compromise. Everybody here wants compromise, but the town board has absolutely refused to engage in any kind of conversation. And so it makes you wonder whether or not your goal from day one has been to close this airport, which is in line with what your May 18th, 2017 town board resolution said, that when you hired Bill O'Connor, it was because of his success in closing the Santa Monica airport. You did that 5 years ago. This has been your goal from day one, despite the fact that 80% of this community in your own public engagement session said it did not want you to close the airport. And now you're trying to close the airport despite the fact that 80% of your community has said unequivocally they do not want you to close your airport. Yet,
Catherine, thank you for your comments. Thank you for your comments.
Okay.
If there's more you'd like to share, please reach out by email or phone.
Unmuting next caller.
Thank you, Jason.
Caller ending 7563. You are on the air.
Good day. Thank you, Town Board. This is Teresa McCaskey calling from the South Hole Town Aircraft Noise Committee. Thank you for your efforts with all that you are doing. I realize that this is a very difficult decision to be making, but do appreciate your efforts as to looking into what is necessary to close the East Hampton Town Airport because, as the previous caller stated about compromise, this just looking at the air traffic that we've been exposed to here on the North Fork, people are reaching out to me with regards to the massive amount of traffic that's coming around Orient or Orient Point. My personal experience was taking a walk with my husband at Orient Point Park, watch the helicopter on a clear blue day come through at 11:45 a.m. No reason for it. Weather was perfectly fine on the South Shore, yet coming through the beautiful Orient State Park, we don't have the airport on the North Fork at all. We're dealing with helicopters. We're dealing with seaplanes coming around, cutting the corners, coming through the causeway. We were told by the Eastern Region Helicopter Council the transition routes are quote-unquote gone, which is not correct because pilots are cutting through Laurel. I have evidence of that. Yet the coalition that was just on the phone, mentioned previously, they say they want to sit down and talk to the town board. Well, letting the town board know that it's sad. It's very sad that the industry continues to come through the North Fork in various routes at various altitudes. We were promised 3,000 feet, 3,500 feet on clear days. It's not happening. Good weather, bad weather, it's just not happening. So I'm calling to let you know that this sadly is still occurring to residents that are living on the beautiful North Fork. And I realize you are under great pressure. But I want to thank you for your efforts. Thank you for all that you're going through, the pressure that you're under. As John Corain had stated, yes, we are your neighbors, and we look forward to your doing whatever is necessary to protect the aquifer, which affects thousands of homes, farmers, wineries, and all. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your efforts. And go with your gut with what is necessary to do, what you need to do to protect not only East Hampton, but the east end of Long Island, especially when it comes to the aquifer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Teresa.
Unmuting next caller. Hello, caller ending 1728. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning. Patricia Curry calling. Say no to KHTO, or in this case, to just plain excess JPX. I would like to commend you for so many years of trying to bring about peace, not only to the people of East Hampton, but to those in neighboring hamlets who have been assaulted, possibly the worst of all, certainly for the longest of all. I wasn't intending to call in this morning. I very much appreciated, however, the explanation by Bill O'Connor of all the litigation that has been filed against the town. And I think that as far as I know, it's public knowledge once a suit has been filed, who filed the suit. We all know how to find out that information. So it seems quite reasonable for Cooley to have put up those slides. But the main reason I'm calling is that, frankly, I was shocked by the, one can only call it air rage, expressed by Catherine Sly, the pilot. It's not the first time, but it gets increasingly offensive. I don't see why any civil servant, any public servant, should have to listen to this time and time again. I have been on these sessions many times when that particular pilot has ranted, it really is the only word to describe it, for many, many minutes, long beyond the 3-minute limit. And I commend the board for having the patience to put up to this shrieking nonsense about how the town has not considered the pilots in any way. It's absolute nonsense. The pilots have never, whether they're local or whether it's Blade or whether it's Tom Bogdan, a rum runner, and his plane and his hangar and his so-called suit because of his neighbors in Montauk. It's just outrageous. And I really hope that you will, in the future, make sure that no one goes over that 3-minute limit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trish.
And we have one more new caller.
Thank you, Jason.
Not to say that more callers might not call in while I'm doing this. And caller ending 9320. You were on the air.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, board. Thank you for hearing us out again. I'm late to the meeting, so I missed the accounting of those who have brought suits against the town, but you believe you me, I will go back and find them. I'm astounded. I'm shocked. And I am just so disappointed in the spin time and again by the #1 pilot who brings her rhetoric of discontent, heightened discontent. And when the majority of our community have been overwrought with the traffic, that here we go again. I live in the Sag Harbor Noyak area, and just a couple days ago I'm watching a small plane go west to East Hampton, following it with my phone camera, and up flies a bald eagle. And the pilots are flying in the face of our discontent. How many concessions have they taken? I'm not feeling it. Sag Harbor has been overrun with seaplanes a couple weeks ago, and the jets and the small planes, and it's too much. And I know you've heard us before, and you're hearing us out again, and I echo John Corain and Teresa McCaskey and Patricia Curry. There's so much more that we can take, and I call and happen to hear our female pilot who rants and raves, and my blood pressure is up just as much. That I don't understand this heightened discontent when we, the communities, have taken this traffic for far too long without the respect that we deserve as a community. And thank you, board, for bearing with us and our testimonies. It hasn't stopped, and we are weary, very weary. So
before you sign off, could you please state your name for the record?
I'm sorry. Yes, my name is Cynthia McGowan, and I live near the Mulva Hill Preserve.
Thank you, Cynthia.
All right. And we have one more caller. Unmuting now. And David, you're back.
Hi, yes, thank you. This is Dave Boone. I'll be very brief. The airport is not my issue because I'm not immediately or directly affected, but I just had to react to Ms. Sly's over-the-top, ridiculous comments, complaining that your attorney would make public the names of publicly disclosed plaintiffs in various litigation. I mean, that's the one beauty of our system, that we have a publicly We have a public court system where documents are publicly available. Everyone that participates in litigation that chooses to either directly participate or lend their name to litigation in one instance, they're required to be held accountable. Those names are public. There's absolutely nothing improper or offensive. In fact, I've been for a long time asking you to have reports from your attorneys listing all the litigation and all the parties. Everyone needs to know who is litigious in this society, and perhaps be able to discern whether they have legitimate grievances that they want to air. So that's really just taking the ridiculous and going to the sublime, to complain that people are going to know who the litigants are and who have loaned their names to commercial entities to get perhaps some jurisdictional grounds for their cases. Ms. Sly, I think, apparently has been flying too high and too long in thin air. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
On that note, we have no new callers on the line.
Great. Thank you, Jason. You could take the number down, please. And Bill, if we could come back to you, there were two questions raised by Ms. Hayes. She wanted to know first, if any of the litigation could be consolidated, and she wanted to know if there was a date for us to go back for the TRO. If you could respond to that, I would be grateful for that.
Sure. I'll take the consolidation issue first. These cases are in multiple different forums, so you have several in Suffolk County, federal court, and before the administrative agencies, the DOT and the FAA. Because of those different forums, you can't consolidate a federal case with a state case. You can't consolidate a federal case before a federal agency, although you can ask for some deference to what's going on before a federal agency to a federal court or state court. All the Suffolk County cases have been related in a way. The town did file a motion to consolidate the cases, but that was ultimately denied. But they are being handled by one judge, Judge Baisley in Suffolk County. So we're absolutely doing our best to streamline the work that we do for you. Many of the arguments, although not uniformly the same across the board, they are similar, and we try to approach them as efficiently as we can. The issue of a hearing, typically in Suffolk County, oral argument hearings are the exception, not the rule. Most issues are dealt with on the papers by submission. Judge Baisley gave the parties an opportunity to be heard on the TRO, but so far he has not indicated that he wants a hearing on the preliminary injunction. So what that means is we're waiting on a decision with respect to the preliminary injunction. The TRO, temporary restraining order, should mean just that it is temporary, but in under New York procedure, there's no set time limit. In federal court, there is a 14-day time limit, just to kind of give you a sense of what some courts view as the duration of a temporary restraining order. But of course, we're beyond 14 days now with that order having been entered on the 16th. Obviously, a ruling would be helpful, so we know where we stand, and if there is going to be a denial of any further preliminary relief, that would give you the option to consider have perhaps broader options to consider what your next steps are. But we're waiting for a decision on the preliminary injunction.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Bill. All right. So Bill and Andrew, I'm going to be presenting operations and complaints now. And since Jim couldn't join us this morning, I don't see the need for you to stay on. So thank you for joining us. And as you said earlier, we'll see you in executive session.
See you this afternoon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask Nick if you could put up the presentation. Jim Brundridge had planned to be here today to us review operations and complaints over the Memorial Day weekend. We've gotten some inquiries, and this was something that we did, I know, back in the day when I was liaison. We kept the community informed, particularly around the major holidays, and with so much interest and kind of flux at the airport, we thought it was good to put this presentation together. So the total operations for Memorial Day weekend, which we define as Thursday through Monday, there were 533 operations. Now, I know folks may have read in the paper that number was higher, that it was around 630 or 650. What happens with the vector data is they have to go back and review everything after the fact. So that was the preliminary number, but that was given to the press when it was requested a week or so ago. But this is the much tighter number after they've gone back, what they call, and scrubbed the data. So for those folks that may be looking at this at home, for Thursday, the 26th, there were 159 operations. And then what Jim did is across the board, then he broke it down. Helicopter was 44 operations, jets 39, turboprops 22, and all other 54. So as we can see, as far as operations were concerned, Monday was the busiest day. With 212 operations. Just to give context, in 2019, there were 1,122 operations for the Memorial Day weekend. And in 2021, the number was 537. So 2021, 2022, there may be the numbers are much, 4 operations apart. There has been talk that maybe there's a new normal now that more people may have moved here and they're maybe using the airport differently now. And what Bill had mentioned earlier, the tower is operating, and that's from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Then what Jim did on the next few slides is he showed the routes. He chose Thursday, May 26th. And the first slide here is the helicopters' arrivals and departures. Unfortunately, there isn't a key on here, so I'm not sure. The green and red, one depicts arrivals, one depicts departures. I'm not quite sure which is which. What you can see on the lower part of the screen along the South Shore, that is the Sierra route into the airport. And then the route that goes north, we've always called that the Echo route. And you can see that the aircraft then on the North Shore is going along the North Shore route. The next slide are jet arrivals and departures. There were 39 operations on Thursday. The next slide is turboprop, and there were 22 operations. And then unfortunately, I can't give much color to this because I don't have the background that Jim does. So if there's folks that have questions, please reach out to me at my email address online, and we can get further data. And then if we go to the complaints that were lodged, and then I need to clarify, this was through the plain noise complaint system, which is a system that the town contracts with plain noise for. We do know that there are folks in our community that use air noise report. While when HMMH does their analysis, we do get the data on that, but that is done, once a year. We don't have access to the air noise report data at this time. But as you can see, on Thursday, May 26th, I'd said earlier, there were 159 operations, and there were 266 complaints registered. The majority of those were for helicopter complaints. On Friday, the 27th, there were 20 operations, and we had 84 complaints. Next slide. Saturday, May 28th, there were 23 operations and 56 complaints. Sunday, May 29th, 119 operations and 205 complaints. And then on Monday, 30th of May, there were 212 operations and 654 complaints. Helicopters were about half, but there were also complaints about jet aircraft and propeller. So that's what I have. If folks have any questions, please reach out and we'll try to get you those answers expeditiously.
So Kathy, I do think it might be helpful if we can get the information, this same information from Montauk Airport.
We could certainly try. I mean, we could have Jim reach out to Michael Norbeck, who is the airport manager there, to see if they would be open to sharing that information. I know they put the vector system in, which is, where we're getting our data from. But happy to make that request.
That'd be great.
Okay, now we're going to switch over to LTV. We've got a presentation today from the Executive Director, Michael Clark, and he is going to be going through the 2021 annual report. Welcome, Michael.
Hey, everybody. Thanks a lot for making some time on your busy schedules. I'll be glad to give you a little bit of an update here. So, Jason, you could put up the first slide, I guess.
Yep, and the slide is up.
All right, thank you. Okay, we're here to give you a little bit of an overview on 2021. That seems kind of in the distant past. We're already into 2022 and well into it, and kind of forgot about all the things that we went through in 2021. But we'll bring them back into view for a quick moment. So, next slide, Jay. Okay, so that's our agenda. We'll talk a little bit about the 2021 focus, a little bit about LTV, our overall production, and our 2021 financial position. Next slide, Jay.
Focus is up.
All right. So the overall focus is basically our mission statement. LTV provides a free speech television and media platform to share all manner of public discourse, education, and creative expression within our community and the world at large. But our overall focus is really to ensure that the public ensure that public access to quality content and media services that basically educate, inform, and enlighten. That's really what we're after. So reflecting on our business in 2021, it continued to be a period of change for LTV and the world. In fact, we all know that, kind of like we went through in 2020. As we look at our accomplishments, there are some obvious things that helped make it all happen. First, strong support from the town and the village of East Hampton. That's always been the foundation of our success. And in today's environment, this unofficial partnership, if you will, is critical for the community and to the longevity of LTV, frankly. And secondly, LTV's small but mighty employee team has always been the key in our ability to shift with the complicated public access direction, the pivot, as we say, and the changes to government support requirements due to the pandemic in 2021. Things were constantly changing. So this was probably our greatest accomplishment in 2021, and in that LTV continued to change on the fly, to follow the local requirement changes, and kept ourselves and the public updated as safe as possible. So we tried to assist the local government and the public and keep them updated whenever it was necessary. Practically, it changed all the time. And LTV continued to use and develop new tools, cutting edge technology, and focused on providing a whole network infrastructure as part of what ended up being our new normal. And that sounds like that's a short sentence, but the one thing I think that people need to understand is that with all this pivoting and all the changes that took place with the technology, and frankly, you on the board will live through that, is that it's not something that we took off of the shelf. We can't just, go grab this product and say, okay, let's implement this and this will work. This was put together really, and I'll embarrass him a little bit, but the man behind the curtain here, Jason, is the one who put that together. And in fact, we were, getting calls from outside companies, including Zoom, on like, how did you do that? So that was kind of a nice feeling. And, those changes, that flexibility, continues today. We're constantly trying to technically stay ahead of the curve, stay one step ahead in saying, okay, what could come next, so that we're not caught by surprise. Next slide, Jay. Okay, so this is a little bit about LTV in general, who we are. For those of you who are keeping score at home, we're an independent, not-for-profit, 501c3. We employ a staff of 5 full-time employees and 6 part-time employees. That's all we have here. And LTV owns we own the large 2.5-story light industrial building on a property leased from the town of East Hampton. Thank you very much. That is designated as a place of public assembly. So what that means is that LTV assumes all costs associated with the general maintenance and repair of its building, including utilities, ground security, sprinklers, fire safety, cable, internet, everything, waste removal. That's all on us. And LTV, we also continuously maintain, repair, upgrades to the cameras and the broadcasting equipment and internal processes at our facility, as well as our satellite offices in Town Hall and in the Village Emergency Services Building. So Jay, next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. So a little bit more about what we do. We broadcast, and this is just a general overview, we broadcast 2 local channels, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We record and live broadcast of governmental meetings, school board meetings for the town and village. We'll get into that a little bit more in a moment. And we offer, of course, public access show development for the local community. Okay, Jay, now the next one. Okay, we are, LTV is what's called a PEG station, meaning public access, education, and government. So we'll start with let me start with the public access portion first. That's channel 20. LTV aired in 2021 an average of, an average of 126 hours of locally originated programs a week. And that's 202 citizen-developed studio shows, 328 LTV developed shows. And, we tried to cover as many of the local events that we could, like parades and that type of thing. We also, we put together, shows that we felt were of public interest, like Facts at 5 and Ask the Supervisor, Ask the Mayor, anything that we thought, might bring more communication to the community. So Channel 22, which is what impacts all of you on the board really the most, is, LTV aired an average of over 100 hours of governmental programming and 68 hours of educational programming per week. And, what that kind of breaks down to is the government meetings, like the town board, for example, 60 sessions, 24 regular sessions, 36 work sessions, 29 planning board meetings, 24 ARB meetings, 39 zoning board meetings, 24 trustee meetings. This is in 2021, and East Hampton Village with similar numbers totaling up to 240 government meeting sessions. There were some special government meetings as well. And then we also had the educational part of it, where we had 22 sessions with the school board and 22 East Hampton School Board and 22 sessions with the Spring School Board, which led to a total of 290 governmental and educational meetings, which is up about 32 versus 2020. Okay, Jay, next slide. So this is, we go through, as a requirement, we go through our audit every year. And this is really something that we're pretty proud of. The yearly audit bottom line is that as per Sable and Opplinger, which is the third-party auditor, the LTV had an excess of revenue over expenses of $150,000 in 2021, and this is an increase of approximately $89K from the prior year. LTV did not have to cut its payroll at all, but we still were able to reduce our expenses by 20%. And this is really the thing that we really look at the most, that the program expenses was 73% of the total expenditures, which means that 73 cents of every dollar is spent directly on LTV programming. So we know that the money that comes to us from Altice via the town, that money's working in the way that it's designed to be working as part of the FCC regulation. So that's a good story. Next slide, Jay. So our next steps for 2022 is we really want to take the government meetings to the next level. By that I mean, continuous technology improvements. This is something that Jason and his team are constantly thinking about and working on. How can we make it better? We've had, I know audio issues in the past. We have to remember that the government meetings they're all set up a little bit differently. So sometimes you have a bunch of folks at the table in front of the dais there, people at the dais, some people talking, some people not talking into microphones and things like that. So, and limited audio capabilities in that room. So we're constantly trying to design and redesign to make it better for the public, so that these hybrid meetings that have been really a result of the pandemic can be even better and have more participation from the general community. So, and then along with that, every time there's technology change, we have a employee training that's necessary in order to run that new technology and make that happen. So, that will continue to be a focus in 2022, and has been so far through the first half of the year, excuse me. We also want to continue to try to create an atmosphere of inclusion. LTV is UTV, it says there, and that's a very strong point. LTV is your station, and I'm talking to the community here. This is your television station, and we'd like it to be the communication hub where people go to get their information. Wouldn't it be nice? I mean, the pipe dream is that, wouldn't it be nice to have a truly hyper news show that talks about the town of East Hampton and what's going on in the town of East Hampton, and getting that information out to the public on a daily basis. We don't have the funding for that. Obviously, that would be something that would need to be sponsored by somebody or some type of organization. But we have the capability to be able to do that here. And I think that would be an amazing opportunity, and just so helpful to everybody in the local community. So we will continue to try to create opportunities to bring the community together. through the arts. We're working more on that now that the pandemic is opening up. You're seeing we've had some, theatrical productions, some discussions, debates, education, the political debates, those kind of things, and so that LTV can continue to make a real difference on the east end of Long Island. So, we have provided to you, to the town board, as required, our financial statements. It's about that thick, but the key to it is that statement that I said that 73 cents on the dollar is going towards the programming that people are tuning in to see. So that's about all I have for our little update here. I'm open for questions, or
does anyone have any questions?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I think LTV has shown itself to be an asset for allowing for not just town government, village government, and other school boards to move forward in an effective means and fashion safely during the pandemic. And to have the staff that you have right now and be able to not cut payroll and keep them on staff and employed as the manager or the director right now, kudos to you. And for Jason, for listening to us, for the needs, your staff, it's really been easy to work with. And the benefactors are the residents. So for that, I want to thank LTV and thank yourself and your staff, Michael.
Thank you very much, David.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that too. I have to say your staff is incredibly knowledgeable and also friendly and easy to work with, and a pleasure. That it's not always the case in public office, but really what you've done with that LTV has just been incredible. Thank you for the different shows that you do, particularly for the diversity show, which we do for the Anti-Bias Task Force. And you've just shown a great ability to grow. And I think the community is so much better off for having LTV as part of our as part of who we are. So thank you so much for what you've done.
And I'll just jump on there quickly, Michael, and just reiterate how wonderful your staff is in working with us and how they worked through the pandemic to keep engagement going when people couldn't come into the meeting room, and then transitioned seamlessly, flawlessly back to allowing people in with even better technology. So I thank you for your direction and for the dedication that your staff has to LTV.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you.
And I just want everybody to know we did receive the draft financial statements and audit from LTV. Becky Hansen, our budget director, has reviewed it. She's comfortable with everything. And so that's great news. And it's funny, when we were doing liaisons for 2022, Peter commented, when we were talking about them, well, if you haven't been the liaison to LTV, it's a real treat. And I pulled rank, and it's a pleasure to work with the board and with Michael and his team. And thank you, Michael, for all that you do for our community.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you for being on board and being the new liaison. And onward we go. We just try to make it better and better, and we'll keep doing what we're doing, and listen to you guys, and onward we go.
If you don't mind, I'd like to embarrass Mike for a second. Just to let everybody know, he's also done a huge amount of outreach, not only to the schools, but for teaching and for our intern program, for getting young kids and young people overall involved in video production, and having this also becoming a real education spot for media literacy. So I just wanted to make sure that Mike was thoroughly embarrassed on this meeting, and thank you very much for entertaining that.
Well, thank you, Jason. You did a good job. I appreciate it.
Well done. Terrific. Well, thanks for joining us, Michael.
Thank you, folks.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
All right, so next up, we're going to get a presentation from environmental analyst in our natural resources department, Samantha Klein. It looks like Kim Shaw's joining us as well to give us an update on piping plovers.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. On to a little bit lighter subject. So I've been overseeing the piping plover endangered species program for 10 years now, and Samantha has been solely on day-to-day operations for the past 5. You know, everyone thinks that there's not any significance to this, but it's a really, really important program. Endangered Species has selected East Hampton beaches as their home for the summer, and we do our best to protect them. We do a lot of outreach to the lifeguards, the public, you know, informing everybody the significance of the program and the birds on the beaches. We went from installing heavy-duty sand fencing to now doing symbolic fencing. We have a lot of signage around town. We do a lot of social media, and we're really getting the word out there. We've had birds that we've identified on some of our beaches that have been coming back here for 10 years. It's pretty amazing that this little tiny, you know, pup ball makes it back here. So Sam's got some really great pictures to share with you and just give you an overview of the program.
All right, thank you all for having me. So our program, the Endangered Species Management Program, is centered primarily around the monitoring and protection of the piping plover. The piping plover is an endangered shorebird that nests and raises its young on beaches, some of those being East Hampton town beaches. These birds have protections recognized under the Migratory Bird Treaty and the Endangered Species Act. The goal of our program is to help our local population of plovers during their critical nesting and chick raising time of the year while maintaining appropriate public access when we can. We track their numbers, movements, nest locations, brood ranges, hatch dates, and fledge dates. In doing this, we are able to make informed and accurate decisions about what the endangered species needs are and how we can accommodate for public recreational use. The piping plover is extremely well camouflaged to the sand. When I take pictures in the field, it frequently becomes a Where's Waldo game once I get back to the office. Here are a few images of chicks, as well as an adult plover sitting on a nest. Their camouflage coloring makes them difficult to see even when you're actively looking for them. The birds, as well as their eggs, are difficult to spot. This is due to their location of being on the ground, as well as their coloration and size resembling rocks. Piping plovers dig shallow depressions directly in the sand for their nests. When an area only has nests and no chicks, we fence around the upper portion of the beach above the high tide line. People, vehicles, and dogs are not allowed in this fenced area, but can pass in front of that before the nests hatch. We rope off areas that plovers are nesting in so that the adults can safely incubate their nests without feeling or being threatened or harmed. We start seeing plovers each year on our beaches in March. We typically have our first nests in late April. You may have noticed that we have fencing up starting in the springtime. Ideally, we want to facilitate the earliest possible hatching, so that way we don't prolong restrictions, as well as limiting the length of exposure and threats to the eggs and chicks from storms and heat and natural predation. Piping plovers are territorial and protective of their young and nests. Part of their protective behavior is to lead perceived predators away from their nests or young by being larger targets. Adult plovers will pretend to be easier targets as well by faking having a broken wing. So they will make very loud noises, put one wing on the ground, one up in the air. We go up to the nest to verify the location, take GPS coordinates. We try to cause minimal disturbance. I apologize a lot out loud to the birds. Next slide, please. These are some differences shown in our fencing. So once we have our hatch dates and the chicks are present, then we do fence off perpendicular to the water. So this blocks for vehicles and dogs in this zone. We ask that everyone be respectful of these fenced off areas. Don't let their dogs run loose in this area. Don't drive their cars in this area. The signs note these zones. The fencing is temporary, and we stay on top of the hatch dates as well as the fledge dates to make sure that these restrictions are only in place for the time period that they're necessary. Next slide. The reason for blocking access of vehicles and dogs when there are chicks present is because piping plover chicks are born precocial. This means that they are able to walk and forage as soon as they are born. So different birds like robins, the parents bring food back to the nest because they aren't able to walk right away until they're more fully grown, whereas plovers, within the same day of them being born, they'll be walking to the water themselves to feed. So pictured here is one chick that had just hatched, so it's still hanging out waiting for its siblings to hatch, but then later that day it'll be moving around on its own. They are extremely well camouflaged, so a vehicle entering an area with chicks or a nest could accidentally or unknowingly hurt them. Under the Endangered Species Act, it's legal to kill, harm, harass, or remove protected species. Although a dog may have friendly intentions or not plan on actually hurting the plover, chasing the plovers, causing disturbance to the birds, and harassing them would be in violation. This can disrupt their incubation, feeding, or make the parents so stressed out that it would abandon the chick. Next slide. Here is a list of beaches with piping plovers that are monitored by the town. Any beaches that are state or county owned are managed by those respective parties.
Federal also?
Yes. I talk to the state pretty regularly. We ultimately submit our data to the DC, who is tracking species productivity and collating information from different agencies. We also coordinate with the state on larger scale projects or events happening like fireworks shows. They contacted us about the FIMP project as well. We also coordinate within different departments. I know that all of you reach out to me about the Plover updates. And also to mention the planning department, Eleni, for example, was reviewing an NRSP application. It was somewhat near Sammy's Beach, further down Old House Landing, but she made it a part of the condition that they would verify with us and make sure that plovers wouldn't be harmed by any construction that was happening based on the window that it was occurring in. Next slide. As Kim was saying earlier, our community in East Hampton has a seasonal population, both of people and of birds that spend their summers here. Some of our plovers have been summering in East Hampton for many years. The plover pictured here was banded in Little St. Simon's Island in Georgia in December of 2010. Having a plover that is 12 years old is a great sign for the plover population and for what East Hampton is doing to protect them and their nesting and chick raising habitat. Virginia Tech has a program for placing bans on piping plover while they're overwintering. We reported this banded plover last year to Virginia Tech's program. We sent this photo in, the coordinates of where the bird was on Maidstone Beach, and the positioning and the coloring of the bands. I photo credited here a couple of my volunteers that help out with the plovers. But we send this information into Virginia Tech and they're able to look in their system and tell us when these birds were banded and any other reports that they've seen on them. We definitely want to make a bigger effort to make sure we're sending these in. The birds are very small to begin with, and then identifying the tags on the birds is, yes, it's quite a project. I'm glad my volunteers have zoom lenses. That is great for us. Next slide, please. Another banded plover that we have. So this one actually has numbers and letters on the tag. So that's even an extra layer of identification that Virginia Tech is doing. Katie Walker is our contact there. She was actually super excited when we sent her this one because this is her hand in the photo. She was actually the person that had banded this plover. It's currently on Sammy's Beach again this year. So this one is a newer parent still figuring out the ropes. A new effort that we're doing. So the town hired Kate Rossi Snook part-time and she recruited one of her friends, Casey Bailey. And they put up camera traps, and one of them was on this nest. So when a nest is lost early on in the season, they will re-nest again. So we're hoping that this parent is learning the ropes a little bit. And unfortunately, this time a crow did predate this first nest. We have a photo of it. I'll save everyone. Yeah.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to erase it from my mind and heart. So next slide, please. So we take down fencing once chicks are fledged because when they're about a month old, they're able to fly away from harm's way or any threats. We measure the success of plovers and productivity, which is the amount of fledges divided by the amount of adult plover pairs. Typically, plovers return to the same area each year, but their locations can shift slightly and also shift if there is a first loss in their season. So sometimes we have slightly different number of pairs season to season, but that might be because they're on the county side or the state side. For instance, on Napeague, our site borders Hither Hills, as well as the Napeague state land. So the state is looking to have a trend of about 1.5 productivity for consistently 5 years. We have come close to that 1.5 or exceeded it in years, but they want to see a stable population level. So we are still working towards that. Okay, next slide. Okay, yeah, so all the past yearly Plover reports are available on the town website. We also have a write-up of the banded plover at Maidstone from last year. We're hoping to do another one this year with some positive information. If anyone is interested in volunteering, they could always reach out to the Natural Resources Department. I'm always super impressed with our team of volunteers, people just dedicating their time to be a part of this local conservation effort, and they are really making such a positive impact on the protection of the small birds. So.
Sam, do you want to give a pitch, like explain what a volunteer would do, what kind of a time commitment it would be?
Right. So it would be monitoring just one beach usually once a week, and they would email me what their observations were. So we would go out in the field together a time or two and show them where the nests are, what the chicks look like, proper identification and all that. And then they would just report back to us. The beach is totally up to them if they live close to one or if they walk on that beach anyway. I've had some students volunteer where I'll sign off on community service hours for them doing this project. I also have some retirees or some people that are like, oh, I walk Last Point Beach at sunset every night anyway. If you want me to keep an eye out and send you a quick email, I'll do that. So it's a broad range of people that are super avid bird watchers looking for community service or have some extra free time and want to spend it in this way.
Great.
Sam, just for the public, can you just explain the difference to the west of Atlantic Avenue and Amagansett and the federal land there and how they protect theirs, which it seems to be a little bit more aggressive than what we do?
Their fencing is a lot more than what we do. If the town...
Just explain who they are.
Oh, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. Yes. So yeah, our sites border theirs, and they have different levels of monitoring maybe than us. If the town were ever to not have this program, it would be operated by the state instead. So our fencing would look similar to theirs. There is more heavy duty. We're able to make very frequent observations in the field. And so our length of fencing is determined by what we see the brood range as needing. So we want to balance the protection of the plover, making sure that areas that they need and are occupying are cordoned off, but also not to be excessive. You know, if they're not using a portion of the beach, we can reduce fencing or move it as needed throughout the season.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Sam, thank you for all that you do, Natural Resources. Every time, now you know why, every time I talk to Kim or Sam or anyone from the department, I learn something brand new. But how, I know they're endangered. What do you estimate the population of the plovers to be? And how are you seeing trends up or down or maintaining the population?
Right. It's definitely fluctuates season to season. We have typically around 30 pairs. I think it was 33 last year, 30 the year before, in the high 20s the year before that. Yeah, the numbers of the plovers do differ. It might be because they're on different sites. And then in terms of their productivity, it could be natural effects. Like there was a really bad storm that we had a few weeks ago and the tide came way up. And so I definitely lost some nests there, as well as natural predation like the crow at Sammy's. This spring was a particularly cold one, if everyone remembers. So it didn't necessarily help to facilitate an early egg laying season for the birds. So different factors are at play in affecting our productivity besides just our fencing and monitoring.
On the federal level, when is there a number that they're trying to target to become protected and not endangered?
Right. So New York is grouped with New Jersey. So they want, I believe it's 575 breeding pairs. And they want it to maintain a productivity level of 1.5. So 1.5 fledged chicks per one pair.
And do you know where we're at now in the tri-state or?
I'm not sure of that number. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
And Sam, we have to stay in communication because with the special event committee, we get a lot of applications for beaches where we've got nests. So it's important when, we're looking at applications that we, reach out to you and make sure
absolutely.
that folks, if they're hiring a caterer and they've gotten a special event permit and they're going down to Sammy's or Louse Point or Indian Wells, that they're well aware of, where the nests are and we can keep them informed. So
Yeah, we can always, provide information. We also plot GPS coordinates of all of the nests. So we do create maps in GIS.
That's good. And you have the beach list here to help us as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for joining us today, Sam. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Kim. Okay, so next up is all hands on housing. As I had said earlier, we had the big meeting on May 17th. There was a number of presentations and a lot of information shared by the board and the Tom Rule and his group and Katie Casey from East Hampton Housing Authority. And now we wanted to circle back and start giving some directions so that these projects the working groups can go back and get into the weeds. So you have a presentation, David?
I don't have a presentation. It's more just discussion, and Eric will bring back some of the overheads for the mapping that we discussed in the past. I think this is more as what we mentioned in our last discussion in May, what our next steps are. And it's just a discussion within the board, what we want to see on some of these projects. So, and I'll specifically go back to the 395 Panago project. I do believe that home ownership in this location is the most effective way to diversify our portfolio right now. We have been adding on apartment rentals, some condos, but we haven't added on home ownership on single tracts of land. Tom, and how long? 15 years? 20 years?
Oh, more than that.
It's been since, about 2000, 10. I mean, 2010 it ended, so it started.
So over 12 years. So as far as diversifying our portfolio of affordable housing that we have in the town of East Hampton, I think this is a tract of land that lends itself to being a nice potential development of a community. And I do believe it's an effective way, an effective use. And the board members and we have discussed this among ourselves. And this is why we targeted this direction in going this way.
And I think just because of the comment that we had earlier in the, today, when we purchased the property, we had talked about this might be a good site for single family. So it's something that's been in the mix since the very, very beginning. We've talked about it just with the purchase of the property itself, which happened a couple of years ago, and ongoing now that it should be single family. I agree with David. We needed to diversify our portfolio. We can't meet everybody's needs. Some folks would prefer single family houses. We know that there's not probably room in the future for a lot of subdivisions coming up for single family. So I think this is a good starting point and a good piece of property for us. And it's, I think it's part of our diversity, as I said, and that's why we're doing it.
I agree. And as we move forward, I agree with the comment that was made about trying to get the greatest yield, and apartments will allow for that. Yeah. But not everyone wants to live in an apartment. Some people are at different stages in their life. Some are younger, some are older in their life, or more experienced. I'll take way older. And I think this is appropriate. So what the 395 working group that I've been the liaison to has worked with the housing office, also the planning department, legal, and other teams right now, is giving the town board 4 different options that we had for a site plan for this subdivision. There's other considerations that I guess in the timing of it right now, there's other considerations that we can look at it that would go into the lease agreements on this then too. But primarily I want to discuss with the board the necessities that we need to try to give direction to the working group, to the engineer, to the surveyor, to draw maps and plans so that we can get this to the planning department for their comments also. A lot of that will come down to design, what yield, what map do we want them to go look at? Is there any infrastructure installations that we want to look at and design into it? Some as far as the restrictions potentially on housing sizes or other things we can keep discussing. But right now, if we can maybe start targeting, and Eric, if you don't mind, would you be able to pull up the four options and maps so the board and the general public can see what we're discussing, and then we can go through those and just get some board comments on it and direction then too.
Gladly.
And Eric Chance from the planning department and Tom Rule is also here from the housing office.
It starts on page 9, if you don't mind. So then, yeah, I see that
presentation we have the memo.
Okay.
Yeah, this is actually the exact presentation that was made to the town board on May 17th. So actually, the order here, but a couple of slides down was what David was just talking about the next steps, maybe some restrictions on the lots or the size of the homes and things like that. But again, this is concept 1. There's 4 in total. When we went through this, the left map is obviously a smaller scale, blowout of the lot and the surrounding area, and then the right map is a close-up of the sketch. I'll just go through them very briefly because we did go through this again about a month ago. This is one which is basically your most basic subdivision layout. It's just a cul-de-sac that comes right up the middle of the property. Obviously, it's a little bit of a narrow lot. So what you have here is just a coordination of or configuration of lots on either side of that cul-de-sac. If you don't mind, if you could just skip 2 pages. This is concept 2. This is basically a variation on that most basic theme, which is to move the access to the easternmost point of the property. That being because, as you can see it in the map on the left even more so, but there's a bend in Panago Road right there that's somewhat dangerous. The eastern portion of the slot is the most appropriate location for access. However, that does mean having like a little L shape or Z shape there in the road. There's a benefit to that. It's a little bit traffic calming. However, the downside is, namely lot 14 would have headlights pointed at them, a minor thing that can be handled by screening, but that's just one of the quirks of this design. If you don't mind, another 2 pages to concept 3. This is a big departure from those last 2 sketches. It's a little bit tough to see. But basically, this is the idea of keeping the access all the way to the east, keeping it along the eastern property line so that the road itself can act as a buffer from the vacant residential lots to the northeast, and then the commercial center and parking lot to the immediate east, providing those lots some buffers. But basically, the idea here is that you would have that road coming up the eastern side, and then you'd have various rows of 2 lots, one behind the other, coming off of that main road that would be serviced by a common driveway, sort of 2 behind 2 in the front. We do that a lot in subdivision design. Usually you have more room to play with because the flag strips eat up a lot of area. Again, we're talking about roughly 1/4 acre sized lots here. As they're drawn. So the real question is, with one of these lots in the front and then one in the back, which way do you face the homes? And if you use the southernmost ones here, which are lot 1 and lot 14. So here's the road up here. Do you face the home on lot 1 facing this way towards the road, and then have the home on lot 14 face the back of that residence? That's not ideal. Do you point them opposite directions, maybe have their backyards facing each other? Again, we have a lot of flag lot design subdivisions in the town. It's usually not a problem because you have enough space that you can have that distance. But in this case, you're talking about 1/4 acre lots. So that's something to consider. We were just kind of playing around with ideas. But this one does achieve the goal of allowing for open space on all sides, which is something we were looking for. And then if you don't mind, another 2 slides to concept 4. This is the one that the planning department feels is the most appropriate, the most consistent with what we would normally require when we're reviewing a subdivision. I say that mainly for the benefit that this has adequate green space, not just using the road as a buffer along the eastern property line. But as you can see, all around the perimeter there, you have a minimum of 50-foot buffers of green space. Again, the road comes in on the eastern side. You need to do that little jog to bring it back to the middle so that you can maximize the number of lots. The front lots before the cul-de-sac are all taking access off the main road. The 6 that would be behind it would be flag lots that would be serviced by a common driveway. Ideally, it would be some pervious surface, gravel, something like that, which is what we usually encourage to have a more rural feel. The downside, obviously, and perhaps this is the main discussion for the board to have when considering these different layouts. The downside of this is, of the 4 that we did, it has the lowest yield of the number of individual lots. That being said, again, these are sketches. I tried to keep all the lots right around 1/4 of an acre. Obviously, you can see the lot number 12 there that's all the way in the south is a bizarre triangular shape. We could probably play around with this a little bit, get maybe 1, maybe 2 additional, well, definitely 1 on this layout, maybe 2. That would make the lots a little bit smaller. We could play around with it a little bit, but basically this is as close to what we would normally advocate as a layout for a subdivision. So basically, I think that that's one of the many charges you have with this project, and probably the first one, so that we can proceed with everything we need to do for filing subdivision maps with the county, bringing it in front of the planning board for comments. But the layout is an issue that should be discussed, and if not today, very soon settled on, so that we can proceed with this much needed project.
Thank you, Eric. And road width is a set standard?
Yeah, yep. It's a 50-foot width. Depending upon the length, there's different improved widths within that span. But what you see in that sketch there is a 50-foot right of way.
And the asphalted area space would be approximately 20.
Yeah, it's I think it's either 27 or 32 feet, and then the remainders on the side there would be buffer. You could do it as green space. So
or utilities.
Yeah, exactly.
What if we wanted to add a sidewalk onto one side of?
You could do it on both.
We could do it on both. Is it recommended on both?
It depends on which layout you go with. I don't know that you need that. You could. This isn't. I mean, especially with this, you see the length of that cul-de-sac road there. You're not going. There's no area to get up really a high amount of speed. You could have a crosswalk over from one side of the the interior access road to the other. I don't know that we need it on both sides. I would say you don't. You just don't have enough people in the subdivision.
And utilities that we would be anticipating would be water, undergrounding electric, which is within what the code does. Is there a need for any type of lighting on
the road itself?
Lighting? Yes.
Yeah. I don't know that there's a need. That's somewhat. I guess that's somewhat of a gray area. Myself, just my inclination, I don't think it's necessary. It's not a through street. It's not going to be handling a legitimate volume of traffic.
Mm-hmm.
I know with some affordable housing developments, you have lighting, throughout the interior parking lot and all that. But, usually when you're talking about a development, you're talking about 40 units, something like that. You're not dealing with this. Yeah, and again, the idea here with all of these sketches, we tried to kind of mirror Maple Lane, which is right down the road, which is a nice little quiet residential neighborhood with small lots with relatively small homes compared to some of the homes and lots we have in town. But so we were trying to kind of mirror that, and we were trying to keep this as quiet and not trafficked as
community.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're developing a community. Exactly. Even though it's going to be an affordable housing community, it's still a community of residents then too. And if we have an option for the town to do so appropriately, looking forward to good planning, that's what we're here to do and discuss. So I thank you, Eric.
And to that point, just very quickly, another thing we did talk about previously, and like, for example, on this sketch, looking at lot 12, but was the idea of if one of the lots or some of the area should be set up as like a common area for the residents of the subdivision, playgrounds, or using it to augment and further the purposes of the open space preservation on the slot, which I'll remind everybody again, all of these sketches provide the 10% reserved area that's mandated by the county for a subdivision. They also set aside at least the 5-acre portion of the property that was purchased with CPF as a single contiguous block. This sketch in particular actually has more, about 1.5 acres to almost 2 acres more of open space than what would be the minimum required.
And there's no other natural features that we have to be concerned with that would be within NRSP jurisdiction. Is that correct?
No, I mean, there's no protected natural features. There's no wetlands, obviously no dune lands, nothing to that effect. Because we both walk the property. There are some older mature trees that would be nice to preserve on the property. It's not as though, there's really one area of this property that is of, extra unique habitat or there's no unusual landforms. It is a hilly property, but there's no what we would call steep slopes as far as what I've seen on the survey, which is greater than 20%. The property basically kind of evenly, slopes upward, upward to the middle and then back down and up. But yeah, the short answer is no, there's no wetlands, nothing like that.
And all the designs enumerate concerns that neighbors have expressed to the board over the time since we've purchased it, as far as buffering to the community, other neighboring properties as best we could. And we've taken that into effect when we've come up with some of the conceptual designs. Thank you, Eric. So I guess it's the committee that's been here discussing this 395 hasn't met. We will meeting tomorrow, actually, just as it comes. So I thank you, Kathy, for putting this on today. Will give us some direction where to go forward. Primarily, the questions I was asking Eric will be questions that we would need to get set so we can get it to a type of site plan and get to the engineers. There's some more information that we would have to deal with the leases with that we can keep moving forward. But I guess I will open it up to discussion about the conceptual plans and your desires for this site, pros and cons for each one. Anyone else?
I would just ask the committee and you to just take, I'm sure you've gone out already, is just to go take a look at the Green Hollow subdivision, which was really well done, single family homes. And how that was done was that was placed in the middle of already existing residential neighborhoods, and it's seamless how it fits in. And it was a single family homes, and part of the discussion about single family homes is living. I used to live along it, and what was great about living there was watching it get done, and then the next few years that I lived there, watching the kids grow a little, to see them run around with their friends, go to school, and establish themselves as part of our community. So I think single family homes offer a great opportunity. And I'm glad that we're doing some of them, but that design with kind of a vegetative buffer on the properties, they didn't have as much open space to work with there. So the design itself is much more compacted, but the style of the homes and the way that they're placed, I think it's really successful.
So the style of the homes is something that we can continue to discuss with the vernacular on that. If Green Hollow sent out an RFP that got, when they decided the size of the homes, which we don't have to do now, they then sent an RFP for a vernacular home to certain builders to choose, and they got to choose that. So that's another templated model that's worked for us, obviously, that we can come back to again. My considerations on here right now is I think I'm looking towards the maximal yield that we can have on here right now. I'm leaning towards the concept 2 on here. The reason why it still gives us the maximal yield on the property or as close to it, but what it does is the entry point of the property is further to the west, where it stays away from a negative 45-degree angle coming off of Hampton, which is just that intersection there is horse and carriage. That's why it was designed, probably. Yeah. It's a triangular intersection. So this will give enough of a safe viewpoint, of a curb cut onto this major street. Also potentially if I would be up for even discussing it with the property owner to the west, if they would want to share a curb cut there at some point. They wanted to close up theirs, come off of
Property
ours.
to the west or to the east?
East, I apologize.
Yeah, okay, I was going-
Christides, what, could call him Marin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think for future, that's how we're trying to do in the Hamlet studies and that discussion in that location. So to me, I understand everything that's been discussed and also from the planning department as far as buffering. To me, my primary objective is trying to get the yield in a way that the greatest amount of yield, but in a developed way that people would enjoy. So that's sort of how I'm approaching it. But again, I've been in these meetings a lot, so I would love to hear from others.
Yeah, I mean, but the one I circled was concept 2. So, but what I did do is when I was looking at it, instead of these right angle turns, if we could curve the road. And I think it's doable to curve it so that you come in, and I can show Kate.
Yeah.
But that makes a little bit prettier flow. I think and then the lights might not be as direct into somebody's room or house. The other question, this is kind of off the track here. On Panago Hill, that's next door, that property next door, there's the easements that are shown in blue. Can those easements be fenced off so that there's no flow between the property that we're using as CPF and getting to that back property? Where can a fence go in a subdivision like Panago Hill?
So I'm not totally sure what you're asking.
Okay, so
Is there a way, I was going to ask Nick, is there a way to make that screen bigger? Yeah. It's the one on the left we want. Perfect, Nick.
Yeah.
So Sylvia, are you saying can a fence be put on the property line of Panago Hill or on the easement line, interior easement line?
Oh, where can a fence go if somebody owns one of the properties on Panago Hill? Where can a fence legally go?
Yeah, well, they actually have their own building envelopes.
Right.
And I would have to double check that, but I think on this one, structures were confined to the building envelopes because they actually have like these strange building envelopes that come sort of right up to the easements there.
Right.
And these easements are actually 75 feet wide. They're pretty substantial.
Right.
But I mean, they could do a fence on the interior portion.
Okay.
If this thing will cooperate, which sometimes it likes to, sometimes it doesn't. But I mean, you could do it on the interior here.
Okay.
Of that. But to my knowledge, I will double check, but since the easement runs all the way up to the property line here, I think technically somebody on this lot could put it like right on the boundary, but on their side.
Right.
But you're not going to have lots from Panago Hill putting fencing on this side of the easement. If anywhere, it's going to be on the other side of it.
That was my concern, only because I want that to be a wildlife, walkthrough, so to speak.
Corridor.
Corridor. Thank you. So I just, I know it's off the topic a little bit.
No, this is what we're discussing.
Sorry, I just wanted to kind of get there. I like having 16 properties instead of the 12. I think we need as many as we can get. I think there's some little, changes we can do. Maybe 16 is kind of a funny shape. I'd probably cut the little pointed triangle off, but that's all nuanced. But I think for the reasons that David said earlier, keeping the curb cut at the eastern end of that property and 16 units, and it's a very traditional cul-de-sac. I think it would be a lovely street to live on. I don't see any need for lighting, street lighting. And I think we need to keep it as rural and as East Hampton as possible. So those are my comments.
Thank you.
And what I was just going to do is kind of take you through my thought process. Option 4, working backwards, was for 12 units, 12 homes, and option 3 for 15. So I immediately eliminated them because every home is a family that gets to stay here and not have to worry day to day where they were going to be living. So, and then I eliminated option 1 because of the dangerous access onto 27. So I landed on option 2, and 16 homes, 16 families. And, I like the idea of you talking about not having such right angles. So now nobody's asking us for stop signs, right there. But, and I think that will be, a beautiful development for 16 families to,
Yeah, I do too.
whether they're aging there or raising their families there, starting families there. I think it's a tremendous opportunity. And going back to, the earlier caller, like I'll never forget in 2017 when I was campaigning for my second term, and I was in the Montauk Firehouse. And it was all of the fire departments on the East End that were at the firehouse. And it was Peter and Jeff and myself. And like, I'm gearing up for all kinds of questions about emergency communications, and everything centered on affordable housing. Our volunteer firefighters and our EMTs, if we want to keep them here or have people be able to live here and be able to, work for the town and work for, volunteer their services, be on the PTA. We need some single family homes in the mix, because some folks, if they can't get a home, they're going to pack up and leave East Hampton.
Well, we've had a fire chief leave East Hampton Fire Department because he couldn't find a home, and he went to Flanders. So,
The town trustee do the same also.
Yeah. So we can't afford that. We can't afford to lose people that want to give that kind of service to the community to leave.
Yeah, and I'll just echo, I like that cul-de-sac design. I think it inspires community with everyone kind of facing each other and being in an area together, versus the flag lot, which works nice when you have a lot of space, as Eric said. But when you're putting people together like this, to me, it feels like you're creating little sandwiches and keeping the community from really developing as a community as a whole, like in a cul-de-sac. And I really like Sylvia's idea of curving the road going in. I think that will take away some of that angular harshness from a visual from the road. And again, that curve also gives it a little bit more of a separation in your head when you're pulling in as well from the highway. I don't think we need streetlights on a single road.
No, I don't either.
The houses will have lights, and actually the lot next door, your bi-commercial lots, which are have parking lots with additional lighting. So I don't think there's any need for any more there.
Is there anything else that you need for your working group?
Sidewalks.
I have to say, I grew up on 40 by 100, and we had sidewalks on both sides of the street. And that's just, I guess, what I was used to. And it was kids, could play there. Their families didn't want them playing in the streets where cars could be. Now, granted, there's only going to be 16 homes here. But I don't know, walking a baby carriage on a sidewalk, kids learning their ride a tricycle on a sidewalk. That's just my culture. So I would be comfortable with both sides of the street, but it's not something that I would dig into.
I kind of like the idea of the people having a little bit more area on their property.
Yeah.
And I think it is a cultural thing when it comes down to.
I think a sidewalk is a little more urban and suburban. So I think I would probably not do a sidewalk. And I think the road at either 27, 30, 32, I don't remember exactly what the width is going to be. I don't see a lot of traffic on a cul-de-sac. It's a dead end.
Maybe we expand the width of the pavement, and you just mark off a bike lane instead of a. I'm just, these are thoughts. So
I guess part of it, like just thinking out loud, I mean, I don't know how long the driveway is going to be, right? So growing up where I did on 40 by 100, you parked your cars in single lanes. So it was always the first car in that had to be the first car out, right? So you'd be moving cars. I mean, I don't know if there's going to be width. So people might be, everybody has 2 cars now. Sometimes if you've got, kids that are driving, you've got 3 cars. They may need street parking. So I don't know.
I think of the
what that
lanes in
looks like.
Amagansett, and they don't have sidewalks, and people do park on the street when they have company over. They generally have space. They're small lots, but they have a wide enough driveway to park both cars. So, I just see it more as a rural use of the property, and I would.
And Eric, can you help me out with sanitary system locations? They have to be in the front yard now, or they recommend to be in the front yard for maintenance?
Yeah, it's a recommendation, just because there's electrical with new sanitary systems. So I think they treat it kind of like, I think that recommendation comes off of like a lot of utilities where you kind of have the box where the technician doesn't have to go rooting through the whole property to find it. But it's not a steadfast rule. I wanted to just mention about the road, just so you have the exact number. So the right of way is 50 feet,
right,
but that's not improved. Improved is 24 feet.
Okay.
So 2 12-foot wide lanes.
Yep.
Cleared width is 32, which means that you have 8 feet. So think 4 feet on each side.
Right.
And then after that, you still have another 18 feet. So another 9 feet on each side in that right of way. So, you have a road and then 13 feet to play with on either side. A sidewalk's only 4 feet in width. So there's plenty of room within, that right of way to accommodate the, again, also with that sharp line, which I did just because it was easier instead of getting out the protractor and all that. But you could have a winding road through there, and it's certainly not going to take up the entire width of that design.
Right.
In fact, actually, I kind of alluded to it on the whiteout one, and I actually, do you mind just sliding it over to the right picture? I forget if I did this. Yeah, I kind of highlighted it, but that's not even the correct dimensions. The green that's in here would be would be significantly wider.
Okay.
So, you don't have to think of it as like, oh, that's all the road and it's going right up to the edge of those property lines. You have a lot of buffer in between.
I don't know if he's listening, but I'm getting a phone call from a person that lives at Green Hollow. That's a former softball coach of my daughter, and I think he's just calling to say hi, I hope. But these are individuals that we talk to. They're very happy with what the design was there. So sorry for that.
Which just raised a thought. What if we did just a little survey of the folks that are living in Green Hollow or ask them to write in, like if we had to do it all over again, or we're designing a new community, what would they do differently?
Could potentially do that. And another thing is that in the town of East Hampton, unfortunately, too many individuals are improving the road right away, which is not their property.
Right.
But since this is actually going to be town-owned property overseen by the housing office, we now have checks and balances to make sure that doesn't happen.
The big rocks and the spikes and everything else.
Big trees. And so what a potential option we can do is draft a map. And then on that map, we can include a sidewalk on one side to see if the board likes it based on, I think we're allowed 2 maps. Potentially, Tom, is that right with the engineer? We have to check on that. So what I'm just trying to say is that now we know what the yield is.
Either way, we're probably not going to move the right of way.
No.
The real question, at the risk of saying it in a biased way, is how many trees do you want to cut down on the side of the road?
And that's how many trees do you want?
How wide do you make the improved area within the 50-foot right of way? The curving of the road can be done, as I think Eric pointed out, in the right of way.
Yeah.
You don't have to. You can put it hard on one side in one spot and then curve it back so that it's not linear. It's more like a curve linear. But if you're going to put a sidewalk, obviously you're going to have to clear further into that 50-foot right of way, and that's just the decision of the board.
Understood. Yeah. No, so that's what we're just trying to get to. Do we add it now? Do we add it later? We can always add it later if we needed to, but I think it's going to be easier to maintain integrity of the right of way on this project than we would in a lot of our other areas that aren't, that we don't have, as constant oversight on.
Yep.
Eric?
Yeah, just to dovetail into that, and I think you were getting here, but another thing we've been talking about the whole time is the connectivity from Montauk Highway up to the back where the CPF property is going to be. And I know there was discussion of maybe having a bike path, maybe adding a hiking trail up the side to come to the back. That, you know, that's something, all the concepts here provide for that. As you can see, there's that buffer that we all wanted along Montauk Highway, but then there's a connection to the main portion of the CPF property. That's something you guys should think about. But another thought, I mean, it doesn't make that much sense with this design. On some of the other ones it did, but is if you do have a sidewalk, you know, you could have a parking area for the public in the front at Panago, you know, and have them walk. You know, usually you don't do that through a subdivision, but that is a way you could get access to the interior. That being said, I guess if you guys it seems like the consensus is on 2.
Yeah.
That's not going to work on this one.
Yeah.
But you should think about, you know, the pedestrian access, both in the sense of the people in the subdivision walking between their homes and maybe walking to the stores, but also the general public, because this is also partially a CPF property. So just consider that when you're thinking of pedestrian travels throughout the subdivision and how people are going to get, you know, from the rear to the front and everywhere in between.
Eric, you think as we discuss this tomorrow, you've heard enough from the board as far as direction and where we want to go that we can start moving forward with mapping and planning? Or is there anything else that we, as you had the board here, that you want to have, you know, need some?
Well, the next step will be to have a surveyor lay out a map. Board's already retained an engineer, Drew Bennett, so that he'll work to lay out the requirements of the health department for the septic system. And just as everyone, we had mentioned the last time that we'd done an archaeological survey and the archaeologist recommended no further work was necessary. So we've covered that because this is what we needed. The critical path forward is for a design, because unlike some of you have been on the planning board before, you're not the reviewer, you're the actual applicant on behalf of the people of the town. The planning board will have input into what happens to this map. And affordable housing projects are unique in that they require approval from the local planning board. So that's our next step, is to go to the planning board. And I have experience, been here long enough to know that the planning board institutes sometimes requirements that have to come back to the town board, and there's a little jockeying going on there. Not on a subdivision, but it happened on a site plan, because they were going to cost us a lot of money. But that's the process. You're the applicant on behalf of the people. And the planning board will be reviewing on behalf of the people, so to speak. So that's our next step, would be to have the engineer and the surveyor prepare for submission to the planning board.
But the town board will see the preparations prior to submission.
You'll have the sketch. Well, not the sketch. You'll have more than a sketch.
Correct.
Because that's when every specific degree and foot and everything else will be put down. This is a sketch, a very good sketch. A lot of work went into these designs, but it's not a surveyor's.
Correct.
Right.
And anything else from the board on this aspect?
Yeah.
All right, then I thank you very much for the discussion. Some of the other aspects of it, as far as restrictions, covenants that we can do in the lease, I think we'll do that again.
Yeah.
As we have some extra time. This is very pertinent for the move this forward in this aspect of the project. Stays on target potentially by end of the year, which is nice.
Perfect.
And we'll bring this back in discussion. With that, I will go back to Kathy. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so the next up was the Route 114 Community Housing Project. I had presented that PowerPoint on the 17th. If everybody remembers, it's 3 parcels on Route 114. The town owns 2 of them, totaling 6.5 acres. We're partnering with the Sag Harbor Community Housing Trust. They have 2 acres right now where the cottages are. What we had proposed was a joint project with, the town, with the trust, and with East Hampton Housing Authority, since they will be running it once the community is built. We looked at people of median income who live or work here, rental apartment units, somewhere between 50 and 60 units, primarily 1 bedrooms, but that, obviously is subject to final design. we talked about it being built of modular construction. The town would finance, and as I said, it would be operated by the housing authority. So I just wanted to make sure that, I got an indication everybody was on board with that, but we also have a working group meeting. I guess we're piggybacking tomorrow of the committee, and I just wanted to make sure before we, it's our actually first meeting. You've got a head start on us. The board was supportive of the project the way it was laid out.
I think there was one question about keeping the house.
Right, that's not something we have to decide today, but we do have to decide. Like right now, I believe we extended the lease, Tom, until the end of January.
Till January.
Yeah, January. There's a family living there. We have to decide whether we're keeping the house and working around it or.
So there was another. I think Tom had brought this up earlier. I think when we were first looking at keeping the house itself and not knocking it down, when we purchased it, was it could become the community house or the community center for all of those, which we usually happens within a community that's 50 or 60 units. So it may be helping us save on construction costs as well. So I just want to, with your group, keep that in the mix.
Absolutely. That's great.
I would agree with that. If it's not that, even if it's a general manager,
yeah,
you're not going to beat the construction costs anymore.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
that's right.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on now. Tom gave a presentation on the 17th and talked about the affordable accessory apartment legislation, about raising the cap there. And what we posted on the website, and everybody I hope has a copy of, is the current code for affordable accessory apartments. Yeah. And Tom has highlighted areas where, before we have Jen Nigro, who I believe is on the call or in the meeting, go back and amend the legislation, we kind of come to a meeting of the minds on how we want to move forward with this. Tom, do you want to take us through the code? Are you comfortable with that?
I'm happy to do it. The main focus from my presentation was just fixing a number for raising the cap.
Right.
And there have been various incarnations of that. That's an easy one. There's some other things in here that are, and just, I know the board's been brought to attention that we've hit the cap in East Hampton with applications in process and approved. And we're turning people away. Building department is turning people away from taking applications. And we're at 14 in Springs. So
why don't we take a step back and just talk about
what we're talking about?
Yeah, we've got 5 school districts, right? The cap is 20
per school district.
Right.
And what we're talking about is affordable
accessory apartments and single family residences.
Yeah.
Right. I
Sorry,
wanted to start
yes.
there. Yeah.
I know that's true.
Let's start at 30,000 and work our way down.
Yeah. So we're talking about the ability to have a community housing or affordable housing apartment on your property or actually inside of your house.
Or either a detached structure, and that's limited to 4 per school district, and it's included in that cap.
Right, and then the total cap is for both, either those 4 and accessory apartments inside of homes.
Right, and at the time that we proposed this, there were kind of 2 separate categories. There was people who really wanted these, and people who were afraid it was going to be the apocalypse, that there were going to be thousands of them, they were going to overwhelm towns, all the school districts would be swamped. The board at the time said, okay, you know what we're going to do? We'll put a cap on it. When we get to the cap, we'll revisit it so that the limited number of people, though they dominated the meeting, that appeared and said they were concerned about it exploding out of control, the cap was put in place. So we have now, fortunately, albeit a lot slower than some people were afraid of, or some people wished would happen, we've gotten to the cap in East Hampton. So I know some of you have been hearing from people who have been told by the building inspector, I'm sorry, we're at the limit. So that was the original. It's been a discussion at the CHOP Advisory Committee and some other committees about raising the cap. That's the the start of it. Now, I understand the board, there's varying opinions from varying different people about what raising the cap means. So that's one thing. But that, I sent around the entire law so that everyone had an understanding of the law, and I can go through the law. That's what you want me to do.
All right, but can we still go back to where we started with the accessory apartments and residences?
Correct.
And so you also sent a chart that had, so you see that at East Hampton, the Office of Housing Community Development has 12 on the books. You've got 8 that are at the building department.
That means they're in process.
They're in process. So that's why we're at the total of 20 in East Hampton.
The initial gatekeeper is the building inspector.
Right.
So she will not take applications once she hits that hard cap at that end.
Okay, so how long have the 8 been in process?
I don't know off the top of my head. I know some of them are close to CO, and I know some of them haven't just came in and applied.
Okay, so
there is no limitation in the law on how, which we may want to put in there.
Right, that's my point.
How long you can keep an open application or a
Exactly.
vacant apartment.
Right.
We don't have that in the code.
Okay, so we may want to add that as we go through the code. So let's just go through it. In Wainscott, there is one. In Amagansett, there are 2. One is in the process, one is already completed. In Springs, 12 are complete, 2 are in process, so they have a total of 14.
Sag Harbor doesn't count.
Yeah, and then Montauk has 4 that are completed, 2 in the process, a total of 6.
Yes.
So we can see that we have, where the totals are. We've got 30 total, 13 in process, and 43 total. You've got an issue with 4. And what does that mean?
That just means that there's something we suspect they may not be complying with Chapter 255, 1163. One of them is in justice court. A couple other it's been brought to their attention that they need to comply. I mean, the fear is that the one in justice court was renting the house and was renting out the house and trying to live in the apartment and or rent the apartment out.
So what you're saying is there's restrictions on what is defined.
Yeah.
You just can't put an apartment in any size.
Year-round rental.
Right.
Capped at 1865 because it's 1 bedroom. That's the maximum rent. Has to be for year-round. If I happen to, be going through Airbnb one day and notice any of these units, or if they happen to apply for rental permits or other things that they're not permitted to do, that gets flagged, it goes to code enforcement, and we started looking into it. So that's what issues means. That these are.
So is there a mechanism to make sure that folks are charging only the 18, 25, 65 year round? Do we monitor that?
They provide us with the lease.
Right.
And we take sworn statements from both the landlord and the tenant. We have 2 notaries in my office. So we make sworn statements, not just, the rent's this. And we take separate applications from both the owner and the tenant, and they should match. They don't, we have an issue. So that's our mechanism for, we want to look at the lease, it's a year-round lease, and it comports with what the 2 sworn statements say. And a lot of these, I have to be honest with you, a lot of these are relatives and they're paying far less than that cap. And even some of the open market people are paying a little bit less than that cap or less than
So you can charge less.
Oh yeah, this is just a cap. I mean, some people are charging $1. There's one where literally the tenant's paying the utilities, but that's a very close family relationship.
Right.
And the size of the apartments have to be a minimum of 300 square feet, a maximum of 600 square feet.
Correct.
There are setbacks for all of them, specifically for the detached ones. They also have to have septic systems that are of capacity and size on the total property for the aggregate of all the bedrooms.
And a number of people that have been required to put in a new IA system. No.
Yeah.
Yes. Innovative alternative systems. Because of enough construction has been taking place to create the apartment that they're requiring to put the system in.
I'm ready to double the cap. I mean, it's to me, it's this right now. It seems we're obviously seeing where there's certain hamlets that don't want to, and we might not even get close to it. But there's certain hamlets in which, individuals are ready to expend that money or want to participate in the program. That would bring it 20 to 40 per school district. I said hamlet. I meant school district.
Yes.
And it puts it up to 200 on that. Do we ever get there? I don't know. We might get there in one or two hamlets, but not in school districts. Not all of them.
Well, the thing is, the school district of East Hampton, as everyone knows, runs from the Atlantic Ocean to the Bay. So that's a very large school district, and the requirement is that these have to be owner occupied, the house. So Amagansett and Wainscott trending towards being more seasonal. Those seasonal houses are disqualified from having an apartment under the way the code's written. So that's the other explanation as to why some hamlets may be lagging over other ones.
So the largest school district is East Hampton School District by far.
Physically, I think that's, I don't know the numbers, but I know physically it's the largest, meaning it covers like a large area. I mean, Montauk probably covers a large area also, but a lot of it's preserved open space.
Right.
Eventually, all the kids, unless they go to private school, end up basically at East Hampton High School.
Well, a lot of these might not even have kids and a lot of these units might not produce children that actually are going to school, because that's actually.
Well, they're one bedrooms.
Yeah,
one bedroom and 600 square foot. So
that was part of all that early discussion.
Yes.
So.
And the minimum lot size is 20,000 square feet for a attached apartment, 30,000 square feet for a detached.
And Sylvia and I just did that a couple of years back, where we decreased it from an acre to 3/4 of an acre, and the floodgates did not open up on that. I'll speak off my cuff right now. I'll be interested in decreasing it more to get more properties to participate, but we can come back to that at a different date also.
Well, it's funny that came up in my East Hampton CAC last night about decreasing the size of the lot in order to accommodate more of these apartments.
And according in the code as it stands right now, under B, site requirements 3, if you have if you're in an affordable housing overlay, so if you're in one of the subdivisions that is created by the town for housing affordability, you cannot then put in an apartment.
That's not
totally
correct?
True.
Okay. If you're in an affordable housing overlay district, Green Hollow was a half-acre map. So and Whalebone is a half-acre map. So that was developed without changing any zoning. The project that we just talked about did require an AHO. So that project will not be, the lots are too small also.
Right.
That project will not be able to do apartments. But we do have apartments in Whalebone.
Cheryl Foster's path too.
And Green Hollow.
Right, on half acres.
Right.
Yes,
those were like one-offs. They came to us and said.
Right.
Well, the lease says, the 99-year lease says you may not rent all or part of your unit without now. So if someone applies for an apartment in those previous affordable housing overlay districts, it has to come to this board. Building can't administratively issue the permit, nor can I, because the lease clearly says you cannot rent all or part of the unit. But this board can certainly, the lease is between them and you can certainly treat them like anybody else in a.
So there's quite a number of checks on what you can do with these.
Can I ask you, Tom, since you're managing this program, and I realize this is more anecdotal, but what circumstances are you finding where people are deciding to do this in their home?
Relatives.
I'm sorry?
A relative. Mostly linear relatives, although somebody put one in for their aunt and then wound up, after the aunt passed, it's now for their mother-in-law. And there's people who have children and other like mother-in-laws and things like that. Parents, children. There's a lot of that. I mean, there are people who who have transitioned into just the open market. You know, they put it in, so they're renting it out. And it's kind of public. Francis, who works in my office, has one. And he has just an employee, somebody who works in the healthcare field living there as an outside party, whole thing. There's some of that, but there are a considerable number of people availing themselves of this for relevance.
So what about in the instance, because I've heard some folks talk to me about the fact that a couple who have now children that are here and grandchildren, they've moved into the apartment and the kids and the grandkids have moved into the house.
There's one or two of those.
And that's allowed under this, but it's restricted, correct?
It's restricted, but if there's one thing that's difficult to enforce, if everybody's from the same family and they all live here and they're all on the same property, I'm not going in there to see who's in which room. I mean, in other words, someone comes and says, I'm renting to my two children and my wife and I live in the house. We're not going in that house to make sure that's absolutely certain. But there are some people who are doing that, who may very well be moved legally, have told us they're moving into the apartment and having their family live in the house.
And how many of the units that you have now are detached versus in, ballpark-ish? So the cap is for 4 for each.
Amagansett has 1 detached, East Hampton has 3, Montauk has 2, Springs has 2, and Wayne's, I'm sorry, 2, yeah. And the Wayne's got 1 detached.
So if we raise the cap, would we keep the cap at 4 for the detached?
So is that this section, Tom, that we talked about that was a little confusing on the bottom of page 2? It was C3A1.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, it's the principal, the owner can occupy the apartment within a residence and rent the principal, but that exclusion does not apply. You're saying there's exception shall be limited to 4 accessories, shall not apply to affordable apartments within detached structures. In other words, the way the code's written right now, it says that you can't move into a detached structure and rent your house to your kid, family, and kids. Now, I think some people believe that wasn't what we intended on doing at the time. I don't know, but that's what it says. In other words, this exception shall be limited to up to 4 accessory apartments within residences within a school district and shall not apply to affordable apartments in detached structures. So in other words, because in every case where that's been proposed, the 2 parties, the rent's like very little. But if it wasn't, if you were to move into the detached apartment and rent the house out, that house would have to be under the affordable housing guidelines also.
Mm-hmm. So 1865 would be the max.
Well, no, we would have a different rate for like a 3-bedroom house.
Right. Okay.
And that fundamentally was one of the issues in the Wainscott case. That house was not being rented out. That house was advertised online for rental for the summer.
Right.
With an apartment in it. And that what landed that person in justice court.
And how's the 1865, that number is done?
110% of the fair market rent determined by HUD for a 1-bedroom.
And so that's outside the town's hands as far as determining what.
No, we set it in the code based on that. The town code is based on that.
Okay.
Because that's the only objective determinant we had of rent is the HUD number, which is the Sony May numbers, which will come up, next week, as a matter of fact. The Sony May numbers will run off the HUD numbers too. Everybody runs off the HUD numbers because the only objective rent calculation you have for town. And the only change we made is that's the Section 8 rent. Is that in Section 8 you deduct for utilities? We do not deduct for utilities. You can charge this and have the tenant pay utilities.
So I'll be honest, I always thought it was different. I thought you were going to be able to rent your, stay in a detached apartment and rent your main house on there then too. So that's something I would like to explore.
Well, that is, I know that was one of the things where people have been saying that that's what it says, and that's not what it says from what's at least in the code book.
So we just want to make the intent clear, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah, do we want to let people rent the house to their kids and move into the apartment? If it's
I think that is a yes. And we just have to, make sure that it's not what's happening in Wainscott, where they move in for the summer to the detached apartment and then rent out the house. And I know more people, there are some in the village that do that as well, but.
That's not our jurisdiction.
No, I'm just saying. It's
Right. We're trying to avoid that circumstance because then we're not increasing housing affordability.
Exactly.
Correct. Well, that is,
which is the goal.
Primarily what we're looking for.
That's what we're looking for.
Or we're looking at the apartments we have to make sure that's not happening.
Right.
So we don't mind. The priority here is to look at raising the cap for the hamlet, so for the school districts,
Right.
for total, which we've already met in East Hampton. And as I mentioned, I would be, it's up to the board. I don't mind even just doubling it at this moment right now. That's my personal.
So that goes back to my question. Would you double it for the detached as well to 8?
Because that would then be within the total of the hamlet of then that it would be at 40 at that moment to 200 as an aggregate in the town.
And double
I think that's reasonable.
And what you're asking is doubling the number of detached permitted to 8.
To 8, right. That's what I'm asking. Out of the total 40, potential 40.
And where does that number come from? I mean, except that it came from 4. I mean, I don't know if you have 30,000, a piece of property that's 30,000 square feet and you want to put on a 600 square foot detached apartment so that you can move in and possibly have family in the house. I don't know do we need a cap on the number of detached if you meet the size lot requirement?
So the origin of the cap on the detached was?
Ironically enough, the first time we did this, you couldn't have detached structures.
Right.
And the first person to call my office had a detached garage, wanted to put the apartment on top of the detached garage, and lived in the house all by himself. He just wanted somebody on the property because he was old and he was afraid that, something would happen. And I had to say, and it was like a 4-acre lot. I said, sorry, you can't do it. It has to be attached to the house. So the board looked at the issue, and then again, the same issue was raised by the same people that, we're going to get inundated with these things. We didn't get inundated. Obviously, we have not been inundated. The cap was to prevent it from inundating us.
It was like almost how we did outdoor dining, 3 years in the pilot cap. You come back and discuss it here.
Right. That was, it was to say, let's see what we get. If we hit the cap in a week and a half, if we hit the cap 3 months later, then the board would have to take, say, well, these, you may get overwhelmed if you pull all the caps off. But over this time, we would only hope that we doubled it.
I mean, this was done in 2016 and a lot's changed.
Yeah, and it still protects the HPODs because the Harbor Protection Overlay Districts, you can't have any of these in an HPOD.
I think what the other thing that we heard when we were originally hearing this is that people that have estates would just have a manager move in. It wouldn't be if, they get their own manager, get their own person to live on the property in a detached structure, which doesn't help affordable housing at all. It just means they're going to get their guy to live there. It doesn't mean they're hiring from East Hampton.
Doesn't mean they're not though, right?
That's what we were concerned about is that, it really isn't going to do what folks wanted it to do. So I think having a cap has been helpful. I'm not against raising the cap, but I think just to say, let it happen everywhere, I think is inviting some pushback that we'll see particularly from Springs, feeling that they're going to be doubling their density. We have to be conscious of density, I think, in this. So that would just be my caveat. I think it's nice that we can come back and visit and revisit time and time again. And I think that's what town boards should do.
Yeah, I agree that we shouldn't just release the cap.
Oh, I'm not saying release the cap from 40, but
No, I
I'm
mean
not
that
sure
the
though
town-
that 8 is the magic number for the number of.
It may not be magic, but it gives us a direction and it gives us time to see what's happening instead of having all of a sudden you could have, many people coming in. And I can see, perhaps folks on further lanes saying, great, I can just, have my caretaker live here. That's wonderful.
Well, so I agree with you, Sylvia, on this. I think having the cap, if you get close to it, it facilitates a discussion like we're having right
Yeah,
now. We're
I think
doing
it's
the
a good
20
thing.
now. And that's a good thing with boards because the board that put this in, majority, well, 2 of us were on. So it's nice to rehash what happened in the past, come back. So I would continue with the cap because I think it elicits, it's a guide rail that elicits greater discussion later on.
Just to reinforce Kate's point, an affordable accessory apartment is not permitted on a lot where there's an artist studio, a rooming house, borders, a home occupation, a home professional office, pre-existing accessory apartment, any 2-family detached or multiple family dwellings, and you cannot rent rooms if you have an accessory apartment. So we're trying to keep it tight and, under wraps.
Or in any harbor protection overlay district.
Right. So it's not like it's
not a free for all.
Right. It's been restrictive, but as David pointed out, we've reached the cap and that was, the intent was to come back to the board.
And Tom, do you monitor these every year? Do you go in these?
I do not, under the code here, have the legal authority to go in. Only the building inspector does. But they have to come to my office, file the applications for renewal of the permit.
Every year?
Yes.
Okay. And if someone, so the first person after we did this with the detached, the first person that called me said they wanted to do a detached so that their son could have a place to stay when he comes out here. And he lived and worked in Brooklyn, but he wanted to be able to have a place to stay out here. And I said that isn't going to fit. Now, she could get him to sign a year-round lease, and he'd have a year-round lease, and he'd come out every weekend.
He has to currently be a resident of East Hampton.
And what does that mean?
Some evidence produced indicating some residency here.
So if you had a car here, is that
if you had a driver's license that said you lived in East Hampton, had your street address on it, that would be evidence you lived in East Hampton. If you had a state income tax form that indicated that you lived in East Hampton, that would be an indication you live in East Hampton. If you had an existing lease somewhere else in East Hampton, that would be evidence that you live in East Hampton.
Voting record?
Well, I'm a big fan of voting records because
Voting registration.
I'm a big fan of those because they're back checked by the Board of Elections. But yeah, you could, you can claim
Not vote.
Yeah, we stopped doing
Well, you
that.
can claim you're
Yeah,
living.
we don't do that anymore with the town clerk. We backed off that when we revised the beach permit.
I
parking.
got that.
You can claim you're living with your parents and you're going to move into your parents' apartment and if you're voting here, and that I'd like something more than just, a voting record, but, as someone who once got denied a clamming license with absolutely no proof whatsoever that I lived here, I was the one who got many years ago, got that into one of the requirements for proving you were here. I was living in my parents' house. I mean, they're like,
I feel, and I'm sure there's lots of people that are living in their parents' house now that it would just be nice if they had a little bit of separation inside their parents' house for both parties.
Well, I think that's why a lot of people have availed themselves of it.
So I'm fine with raising the cap.
So just to sum it up, what we said was 40 affordable accessory apartment permits per school district for a total of 200. We said that 8 per district can be detached. And maybe that paragraph, Tom, that people are interpreting differently can get cleaned up. And then everybody was good with the fact that it was The size was minimum of 300 square feet, maximum of 600 square feet.
I'm a little sketchy on the 600, but I think it's, if you're saying one bedroom only,
Yeah.
I think raising the size a little bit makes it just a little bit more livable.
Yeah. I checked with Tom on that because we had a conversation about that, and he had said that in the manor house, the one bedrooms are 600 square feet. And that's the typical size of a one bedroom in Windmill 2, I think.
It's also a break point, or it used to be a break point at the health department with the
Right.
septic.
Okay.
It was
Yeah. No,
0 to 600, and then
works.
once you go past 600, you go into a different category.
And Tom, there's no income requirement on the tenant. The only thing
no.
is the rate, the rent.
But the rent, and they must be a resident of East Hampton.
Okay.
So
I hopefully, John and Jen, there's enough to go on here. If maybe we could get this legislation revised and bring it back next Tuesday, the work session, because I know we're going to be having other community housing discussions. I believe the supervisor had said that we were doing the community housing plan next week. And also, I believe Jen was bringing back the two chapters, 160 and 162 that we heard on Thursday. There were some Scrivener's errors that were cleaned up, and we could bring that back as well. So if that's doable.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that completes our agenda for today. And Tom and Eric, thank you for joining us for the discussions and helping facilitate those. All right, so now we're up to liaison reports. Why don't you start, David?
Ooh, something new.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, we are past the Memorial Day weekend, but I wanted to let everyone know that the beaches are now open as our lifeguarded beaches on the weekends. They started on Memorial Day weekend. That would be Indian Wells, Atlantic Avenue, Big Alberts Landing Beach, South Edison, and Dish Plains. All regularly lifeguarded beaches are then planned to be open 7 days per week, beginning June 18th, including Maidstone Beach in Springs, Kirk Park in Montauk, and Gin Beach in Montauk also. So please note that the bathrooms are open at these times also then too. I had my Montauk CAC meeting last night. We had a nice discussion. It was on a Zoom meeting. We had Senior Harbor Master Tim Treadwell come in which we discussed illegal poaching. First of all, it was the first time he had been to the Montauk CAC after he's taken that position as far as running Marine Patrol. We talked about beach fires, beach fire regulations, potential permitting of them. And he discussed about the processes of Marine Patrol on the water, off the water. He talked about how he has enough hiring right now to have an evening staffing shift, but a lot of times they may get drawn away to a different discussion, a different enforcement action. They might not be on the same schedule that he wants, but he also explained, and the committee knows, that the admin bureau is really going to help with the time that we have on the sand or in the boat then too. He also was discussing a lot of illegal poaching of shellfishing that's happening, specifically in Napeague Harbor recently, then too, in which they're finding a lot of individuals from up west, outside of our town's boundaries, are coming up at nighttime and just taking anything they want in our waters, and they are undergoing enforcement actions on those then too.
That's scary.
So he was met very warmly by the CAC, and I'm happy for that then too. They had that went into the beach subcommittee that they have, where we talked about most of that already. The airport subcommittee had a discussion. They put to the airport subcommittee for the Montauk CAC put out a resolution, and the resolution stated that they opposes changes at the East Hampton Airport JPX, which will substantially increase flight traffic in the Montauk Airport. The discussion ensued that there was very similar language that has already been passed, that it passed with 19 yeas, 1 no, 5 abstentions. Mostly the abstentions were that the language is vague, and that that the Montauk CAC has already stated that. And I made sure I expressed that to the town board, and they are still concerned about any potential actions that we might have in Montauk. And they did ask if there is a chance for Montauk Airport to share their vector data. Okay, if it was confirmed, please ask for it, as you mentioned already earlier to Sylvia. So thank you very much for that. Number 2, actually that's number 3 now. Beacon Wind 1 is reaching out. They're having an upcoming North Shore Community Meeting to be held virtually on Zoom on Wednesday, June 22nd at 6 to 8 p.m. This will be discussing the project's renewable power to more than 1 million New York homes by delivering power from an offshore wind farm from waters east of Long Island to New York City. If you have any concerns, I would reach out to Beacon Wind and participate in that Zoom meeting on June 22nd from 6 to 8 p.m. I want to let everyone know also, as I let the CAC know in Montauk, that Suffolk County has submitted a request to the FAA to disable the lights on the two Gator sites. This should be on the FAA's website. Again, it's now FAA decision, knowing that the Gator sites are Suffolk County. Suffolk County was the lead on any action to be taken there then too. I know that we received some comments about that in the past. Water quality. CCOM is partnering with the town of East Hampton. We'll be hosting a community event, the South Lake Water Quality Open House. This will be held on this Friday, June 10th from 1 to 3 p.m. They'll be looking at the South Lake Improvements Water Quality Testing Demo, septic upgrade information, IA, septic tour and testimonial. The parking meet is at South Lake Drive in Montauk off of Montauk Highway. I want to let everyone know the application period is open for the water quality project grants. This is for the water quality technical. This is from the CPF and the portion for the water quality funding. This is our second round this year. The town of East Hampton is accepting grant applications for water quality improvements, funding from the portion of the Community Preservation Fund earmarked for such projects. The second application window has already opened, with proposals are due before 4 p.m. on August 1st, 2022. Please contact the Natural Resources Department for more information. That's 5. SCALP, Suffolk County Aquaculture Lease Program. There's a public comment period going right now. That's about to happen right now. That is happening right now, for comments regarding proposed lease sites that must be prepared in writing and sent in via the mail. All comments must be postmarked by Monday, August 1st, 2022. Please go on to the Suffolk County Departments of Economic Development and Planning Divisions, Planning and Environmental website to get more information about these sites, so you can see them and then send your comments in as you would like. And too, a couple of things I recently did over the last couple of weeks since we've seen or have met and had a liaison report. I did go to the Springs Blacksmith Shop opening. I want to thank others that are on here then too. It was great. They paired it together with the farmers market. It was a great day, great turnout. I saw other members of the East Hampton CAC who were there. James DeMaris was working, brought my daughter down there, and it was fun to see it operational and open. I look forward to going there more often than too.
Yeah, so it's going to be open again. I believe it's Saturday, June 18th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. They're going to be doing it once a month from now until October.
And during the Fisherman's Fair, they usually have it open and operating.
Yeah, it's just great to go in there, and particularly to show little kids this is how we used to do it, because we're such I believe we're so consumer based and we just throw things away. Yeah, so they recycled everything, used it, and it's great to see where things are made. Also, I presented 2 Eagle Scouts with proclamations from the town council. One was this past Sunday. One was named Troy Remkus. He's Pack 455, which is from Sag Harbor. Troy Remkus, actually, his Eagle Scout project was installing 1,500 oysters for living shorelines in Gannett Creek in Sag Harbor. And the other one was James Farrell, who was originally from Pack 426. Give the shout out because I was a PAC member there at one point, that now switched over to Sag Harbor, where Coach Jim Stewart is now going to be the acting PAC Den leader.
Nice, awesome.
Yep.
Great.
And and James Farrell's project was installing a kiosk that he presented to us.
Right, he was here.
Yeah.
Exactly right, which is up by the Banskoy Schoolhouse, and it's a beautiful setup and install. To go see it, and it's been used very well. So I was very happy to go there. It was a very nice ceremony. It actually brings me back to my boyhood and my youth when they recite the Scout oath. and a lot of those foundational movements. So one thing in my remarks I didn't get to say was that if these gentlemen that were in front of me, either being the Eagle Scouts or the Cub Scouts, are part of the East End's future, our future is bright. Okay.
Nice.
They do a very good job, and always be prepared. My daughters now wonder where I got that from. So lastly, as the rest of the board members did, we participated in the Memorial Day Parade. I wanted to thank Jeff Kiger and John Gearing for officiating that. But more specifically, I want to thank Jeanette Payne.
She was fantastic.
Fantastic. Okay. Army medic.
Yep.
In 2007, East Hampton Bonnet graduate then too. Unfortunately, you couldn't hear her from everyone. I heard her there, and
we were pretty close.
I was
Yeah.
locked into it because,
yeah,
she gave the history of female participation in the armed forces, from where it was very trivial, or excuse me, they were hello girls, from when they were doing minor tasks compared to now being full-fledged infantry individuals or persons. And it was inspiring, actually, as a father of 4 daughters, then to hear from her, and I made sure she knew it. And she's a friend of mine, and it was great to be there and hear her speak about that, and also about her regiment that is going to be moving out again, not hers, but her former one.
Right.
It was inspiring and uplifting on that day. It was nice to see the community out there.
Can you get a copy of her speech?
I will check.
Because I thought she outlined the history of women in the military from beginning to end. And some of it was very poignant, that some women did not get the recognition they should have gotten after serving.
Or the VA benefits.
Or any benefits until 80 years later, when most of them weren't even around. The Congress finally voted for them to get VA benefits. So it was a fascinating speech, and
I agree. I will
worth repeating.
I will reach out. And she also touched on Memorial Day. There's a difference between Veterans Day and Memorial Day. Memorial Day is for ones who lost, but she also touched on the amount of suicides that happen in the armed forces also.
Yes, she did.
So it was very well-rounded, inspiring. My children was there. One daughter was there with me at that moment. I brought up there, but it was a very nice Memorial Day weekend. A lot going on in East Hampton, and that's my liaison report, Deputy Supervisor.
That's a great way to end it, though, with that speech, because it really was something. So mine is simple. The Waynescott CAC met on Saturday, and instead of having a 3-hour meeting, we had a 2-hour meeting because we wanted to make sure that we could all get to the Pride Parade, which was this past Saturday. And again, a wonderful event, lovely event. Want to thank Tom House for all the work that he did. I think it even shocked him how many people participated in it and how many people showed up for it. And it was really heartfelt, lovely, good to see kids, families, everyone participating. So the Waynescott CAC also wanted me to announce that on June 19th is the Strawberry Festival at the Waynescott Chapel. That's going to be from 2 to 4, so please come by. That's a very busy weekend for all of us, I know, and for the community. It's also Juneteenth. It's going to be having in Herrick Park, there will be speeches and activities going on for Juneteenth from 2 to 4 in Herrick Park. And on June 18th is going to be the dedication of Tuskegee Airman Lee Hayes. Are you going to announce that? Oh, okay. I don't want to take away your thunder. No. Dedication at the youth park. So as I said, it's a busy weekend, and hope everyone can make time to go and see some of these.
Could you go over the Strawberry Festival was what time?
Is 2 to 4.
It's on the 19th.
And then that's the same time as the Anti-Bias Task Force working with the village for the.
Yes. So we will have a
Herrick
table
Park.
and there are speeches, and I know Calvary Baptist Church, Reverend Thompson is going to be a speaker, and I'm not sure who else is going to be a speaker, but it will be at Herrick Park between 2 and 4. Right.
Father's Day.
And it's also Father's Day. So as I said, it's a busy weekend, but
they all are. Yeah.
Well worth it.
Especially when you have 4 girls.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, that's great. That's what it's about. So, living the life there. So that's the happy news. There was a complaint at the CAC about road patches that were done by South Fork Wind, and that they were a little bumpy and uneven. And Kate, I want to turn to you because I asked you about that and you had some information for me.
Yes, Peter also mentioned that some of the patches from South Fork Wind, from Hogland, the contractor who did the trenching work, they were bumpy on Northwest Wainscott Road, and I brought the matter to South Fork Wind, and they were more than happy to repair those surfaces. The one sticking point that we have to get over is they're not, by either their permit or the town easement, John, allowed to do any work on the town roads. So in order, from April through September, there's a moratorium on them being able to do work on the town roads. So we would just need to figure out a way to give them permission to be able to do these repairs since they are on a town road.
I'll have to look at the documents. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the one point that we need to decide how we're gonna to give them permission when they're in this moratorium time period, and that's also with their state permit.
Okay, that's great. So thank you, Kate, for that information. There was also concern about pop-up shuttle services from beaches to seaplane landings. I think that would be under our peddling law that they would have to come to us to have that type of service.
Seaplane landing?
In the town of East Hampton?
Well, I think they had read the story about
Sag
Harbor.
Sag
Oh,
Harbor.
but we've prohibited that in our code, actually. You can't.
Yeah.
Can't land a seaplane on our beaches.
Well, not on our
See into it.
beaches,
Yeah,
but
it's 1,500 feet from shore. You can't do it. But if
But you
they
can't,
want-
under our
would that be a
code.
ferry service?
no,
Oh, you mean if you could platform it out beyond 1,500 feet? Like
I don't know.
they
Take a
attempted in
little
Sag Harbor?
Zodiac from
Because you
point A
can't,
to
well,
point B.
that could be, that could be an issue.
It came up, and I'm just wanting to, alert what is being, what, people are hearing and saying.
It's a commercial service on the beach.
Yeah, it
I would think
definitely would be.
so.
Sounds like it
Yeah.
to me.
That's under
Oh,
our
yeah.
peddling.
Yeah.
Okay,
And depending on where, it could be town or trustees or both involved.
okay.
Hmm.
Barry Frankel, one of the members of the CAC, gave a review of all 5 meetings of the Wainscott Working Group that we have for the Wainscott Hamlet study. The part of his conclusions, he did say that he thought that all of the meetings were well done, well attended, and that what's going to come out of it at the end is going to be worth looking at and considering. He's one of the things he zeroed in on was that current zoning allows for more commercial and industrial development in the hamlet itself, and he's concerned about the number of cars per hour at peak build out. They would like to see more open space in the hamlet in that commercial area, and zoning changes need to be considered that are consistent with the hamlet's business areas and other areas that you see. You've got in Amagansett, you've got an open space, a green open space, in even in Watermill, they've tried to put more of a green open space. So they would like to see more of that. You've got the green in Montauk, and we haven't really looked at that. So there may be zoning changes necessary to
Well, Lisa and Peter Flinker, they're the ones that were running these working groups, right? Are they due to come back to the town board
They are
with
going
a
to
report?
Exactly. I need to get in touch with them to see when their report will be available, but certainly pretty soon, so that we can move on then to Montauk to do the next one too. The southern pine beetle came up. There was some research done by one of the members, what to do with the dead trees that are on the ground, whether or not scoring them really does have the effect of killing them, whether they need to be dragged out and chopped up, and how are we gonna and what should they do with these trees. So I have hoped that they will invite someone from land management to really talk about how the town is working and the knowledge that they have on eradicating or stopping or trying to make the southern pine beetle limited in destruction. Beach lane bike racks, they're in the handicap parking space, so I've contacted Tony Littman to make sure that they're not in the handicap parking space and put in another area.
Had that issue before.
So, and there was, I sent an email to Chief Sarlo, who's going to get back to me on the need for the police barricades at the end of Town Line Road and to see if those are still necessary to stay up. And
That was a request of one of the members of the Waynescott CAC for a dangerous situation that was there.
well, they are now saying, is it still, I did not go down there this past weekend. I didn't have time, so I should go down and look at it. But Chief Sarlo is also going to look at it and see if they're necessary.
Sure.
Okay. And that's it for my report. Great.
And I just wanted to report on.
Oh,
I'm sorry, Kate.
It's okay. I'm all the way down here.
You talked about the patching. Sorry.
I got just a couple more things.
Yeah, that's true.
Spring CAC met and they were talking about a proposal that's not a proposal or wasn't fleshed out about adding more parking near our public beaches. And while there's not a proposal, the Spring CAC, as Springs residents with no oceanfront beaches in our hamlet, are in favor of investigating more public access and public parking near our beaches. And they also discussed something that they've talked about before, which of course, being in one of the highest school tax districts is impactful, although not directly in our jurisdiction, and that is to form a subcommittee to once again work with the state on trying to address school consolidation. And while it is not in our jurisdiction, they feel that a subcommittee working on it would be appropriate because they would be asking for a letter of support from the town board eventually if they were able to push this forward. You all brought up the blacksmith shop demonstration, and I would just again like to thank all the folks spearheading that with Prudence Carabine spearheading it. I was also at the opening day along with Assemblyman Fred Thiel, who was also there to show his support for that effort. And Prudence gave a wonderful speech about the efforts to reopen the shop and the importance of needing to celebrate the Bonnacker heritage and keep that history going, along with the work that they do at the library. Prudence told me that over 200 people visited the blacksmith shop, and I had a great time. I was amazed at the ingenuity of Charles Parsons. When you think of a blacksmith, you think of, a guy that does horseshoes, but he did everything, including anchors for the fishermen. He also invented a steam car that was flying around in Springs at some point, and was really an inventor here in the town. It's wonderful stories, and I hope that folks will get out. And as Kathy said, the next date is June 18th, Saturday, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., and it's certainly worth the trip to see how we were able, so far away from forges in the city, to be able to craft metal for all of our needs. Wagon wheels, anchors, chandeliers, nails, door hinges. I mean, everything was needed to be created there, and it was really an interesting exhibition. As far as the Springs Historical Society and Community Library, they have a couple of June events coming up. It is right now the last chance to view the exhibition titled Recognizing Women's Right to Vote in New York State. That display will end on June 11th at the Springs Library. They'll be, however, on that date, on Saturdays in June at 10:30 a.m. at the Springs Library, they will have their children's reading circle. So please bring your kids, grandkids, friends, and they will be outside, weather permitting, on Saturdays in June. Their very popular Meet the Authors series is continuing on June 15th, Wednesday at 6 p.m. And this time they'll feature Helen Harrison. So, I mean, those ladies never stop doing for the community. They're wonderful. The Internal Wireless Committee met, and we are continuing and nearing a draft update for the wireless code. That will be ongoing. Southwark Wind held their monthly compliance meeting, along with their biweekly compliance meetings that I attend. And while they're not on town roads anymore, I am getting all the updates on compliance and their progress along the right-of-way for the railroad corridor and their construction of the interconnection substation. All that work is ongoing. I know that Carolyn had written, Logan Gluck, as chair of the CAC, had written to Southwark Wind asking about where soil and water storage may be going on, and they replied that none of that will be stored on either of the two staging lot laydown yards that we've approved for them and that the state has approved. I also attended the Memorial Day parade, and I just want to add, that's another event that's worth coming out for, with kids and the whole family, to keep that history alive and honoring the soldiers that served. Then the following Saturday, I attended the Pride Parade with my fellow board members, which is a wonderful community event. Props to and congratulations, Tom House, who put this together, I think mostly single-handedly, but he did have some help from volunteers. It was a great community event, which ended up in the park for a dance party, as they called it. And I'm still sore because somehow in my head it went back to the 80s and I was dancing around all over the place. And it was just that kind of feeling, a wonderful, warm feeling, embracing all of our community members. And I thank Tom for doing that. Let's see, yesterday I attended the Renewable Energy Roadmap kickoff meeting with the consultants that we hired, who we gave input to and what we're looking to move forward, transitioning from our original climate action plan to a roadmap, energy roadmap and resiliency for future planning. That brings me up also to the CARP committee, which is meeting and is developing an outreach to each of the CACs. You'll be getting a request for an invitation to present at the CACs on the CARP plan. That'll be happening this month. You should be receiving those invitations shortly, or the request for an invitation shortly. I also want to note that in the Star this week, there was an article on the Devon Yacht Club, which will be migrating further away from the shore to deal with sea level rise. And this is what we're seeing. We're seeing, just like the Shelter Island Ferry that raised their docks, the docks at Montauk being raised, the folks that live and recreate on the water are already seeing the impacts of the sea level rise and are planning accordingly for the future. So that's good to see as well. I also, on a personal note, attended the memorial for Betty Mazer on the beach out in Amagansett, and we just would like her to thank her family for all the hospitality and warmth, and for including us all, her extended family in that service. Lastly, there is a survey up on the front page of the town website and a demonstration of various Kelvin street lights, which is, Kelvin is the color of lights, down at the southern end of Atlantic Avenue towards the beach near the life-saving station. And there are QR codes, and if folks want to get involved in participating in the survey as we look towards replacing our existing incandescent bulbs in our street lighting. This has to do specifically with street lighting, highway lighting, that they go down and take a look as we transition to LEDs at what they prefer and participate in the survey. That would be very helpful to us in making a decision. And I encourage everyone to pop down. Fortunately, I have to stay up till 9 o'clock because that's when it's getting dark. I was thinking maybe we should have did this when it was getting dark at 4 o'clock, but the time is now. So I asked folks to go down and take a look.
I do want to just say one thing about the Pride Parade, and maybe not necessarily about the Memorial Day Parade, because it was a much more somber occasion in many ways, but the Pride Parade had no balloons. And and it was still festive and bright and cheerful, and there were bubble machines and small flags, and we saved. I feel as though we saved some sea life and birds' life, and by not having those balloons. And thank Susan Keeber and Darrell Godfrey are two people that have championed that cause, and we saw it in person. It was great.
And I think those bubble machines were more fun.
They were a
actually.
lot more fun.
Really great. It's the first time I ever saw them. They were fun.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So I just wanted to talk about the new East Hampton Senior Center. We held the community engagement Wednesday, May 18th, Friday the 20th, and Saturday the 21st. And I'm grateful to everybody for participating and meeting the architects. And I'd like to just highlight a few of the takeaways that were worth noting. Across our engagement kickoff week, the design team spoke with 120 plus residents, users, community members, and elected representatives and town staff. These conversations yielded nearly 500 data points, and R2 was still reviewing that information. Over 200 sticky note comments were collected virtually and in person, with a surprising amount of commonalities. Emerging themes were nature and outdoors, activities, arts, dining, wellness, and the design and site opportunities. The next steps include developing the survey based on feedback from the listening sessions. Our goal is to have that launched later this month. And they are now starting to wrap their head around and starting to begin space programming. This is going to be informed by the existing building, which they got a tour of, prior studies, the conversations we had with staff, and feedback from the sessions. And so we're really excited about the next step. I've gotten comments from folks, even last night at my CAC, who had attended, and just everybody was very complimentary of the team and felt heard, which is really what it's all about, right? And I guess I'm gonna piggyback on talking about, I had in my notes too, mentioning the Memorial Day Parade and Staff Sergeant Jeanette Payne's comments, particularly her remarks about women and how they were initially not recognized in the military. And then the Gay Pride Parade, which we all participated in.
I was at my daughter's softball game.
Was in Montauk, right?
Montauk,
The rest of us were there. Bridget Fleming was there, and Bob Chowner from the hospital was and Catherine Zoika from County House Bookstore was there. And what was neat, Jerry Larson got up and had a few comments saying it was the first annual Gay Pride Parade, that from now on, the first Saturday of June will be the date. And Catherine commented how last year 4 folks went down, her and Tom House and 2 others went down to the Wainscott Green where the swamp was, and commemorated Pride Month. And then last Saturday, there were 1,000 people there. And they're hoping next year there'll be 5,000. So it was spectacular and so joyful, and really brought the community together. So that's what I have. We have a couple of resolutions. I guess I'm up first. So Resolution 2022-757, it was to authorize the chief, Lieutenant Tierney, and Police Officer Tierney to attend the New York State Department of Criminal Justice accreditation ceremony in Albany. The financial impact, I'm going to do this as amended because it's $850 in the last resolved, and then in the impact it says $800. So we're going to go with the higher amount and say the financial impact is $850.
Second as amended.
All in favor?
Aye.
758 is to authorize reimbursement for fingerprinting to account clerk Bridget McAuliffe in the amount of $88.50.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
2022-759 is a payout upon retirement for Joseph Montiel. And this includes vacation time, sick time, personal time, holiday pay, and shift differential for a gross total of $95,882.83.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And congratulations, Joe, also. I would like to offer Resolution 2022-760 is appoint Jerry Samuelson as an ex-official member for the Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee for 2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 2022-761 is adopt a local law prohibitions, regulations for fueling of watercraft and town-owned properties. We heard this public hearing on June 2nd.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. John, I told you we can do it 12 years later, buddy.
I'm impressed.
There we go. Thank you for your help. Resolution 2022-762 is adopt local law, amend Chapter 240, Section 240-61, Schedule 11, parking prohibited at all times, and Section 240-77, Schedule 27, time limit parking, May 15th through October 15th. That should say 15th. So amend that to October 15th, not 1st. You know what? Let me double check that. It is October 1st. That is correct. I apologize. And Section 240-79, Schedule 29, permit parking. Again, we held this public hearing on June 2nd.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 2022-763 is to authorize the Rods Valley Management Plan update authorizing resolution. Again, we heard this public hearing on June 2nd, 2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 764 is amend resolution 2021-788 to authorize employee reimbursement. This states that employees who are doing a drone certification course initially would be able to not to exceed $173. We need to amend it to cost not to exceed $175 for those employees listed on resolution 2021-788.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. And I have a 2022-765, and this is to appoint part-time environmental technician Melanie Warren. It is resolved that Melanie Warren is hereby appointed to the part-time position of environmental technician with the Natural Resources Department pending the review of transcripts with the Suffolk County Department of Civil Service at an hourly rate of $24 per hour to be paid bi-weekly upon proper submission of time records effective retroactive to June 7th, 2022.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Resolution 2022-766, I'm going to offer with some amendments. Whereas the town, this is to authorize repairs to the Urban Renewal Road, Harbor Boulevard. And this is whereas the town highway superintendent has identified dangerous potholes on Harbor Boulevard near residents. And this is where one of my amendments is. It says number 26, it should say number 28. And also it just says, it says at the intersection, but it should say before the intersection of Claremont Street. And whereas Harbor Boulevard is not in the road, town highway system, and
Wait. Carol asked you to hold off.
Yes. You good, Carol? Okay, great. Whereas Harbor Boulevard is a road not found in the town highway system, and it is resolved that the town board authorizes the highway department to make the necessary repairs.
Second.
As amended?
As amended. All in favor?
Aye. The next one is 767, and this is again to authorize repair for an urban renewal road. This one is Harbor View Avenue. Whereas the town highway superintendent has identified dangerous potholes, and I believe Harbor View Avenue in this area is 2 words.
That's what David said. I don't know the answer.
I looked it up and it, when he was talking and I'll offer that as amended. That's 2 words, Harbor View Avenue in East Hampton. And again, this is a road not found in the highway system. Therefore, it is resolved that the town board authorize the highway department to make the necessary repairs on Harbor View Avenue.
Second. As amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, so now do we have a motion to go into executive session?
I make a motion to go into executive session for personnel, discussion of an easement, discussion of the Administrative Bureau, and advice of counsel.
CPF if we have time also.
Oh, and we did CPF.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so it is
2:30.
2:30. It's 3:15. Does that work?
Yep.
3:15.
Yep, I can do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll call in if I should be already on the road, but yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Jason, thank you for helping us out there today.
Yep, no problem. Matt Lowndes, actually, I took over halfway through, but I'll tell Jason.
It went long.
Sorry.
Thanks, Matt.
No worries. Have a great day, everyone.
All right.
Too.
Thank you.